You can keep the change. Actually, let me throw that away for you. Those 10 words, spoken with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, turned a simple lunch transaction into a public execution of dignity. When Darius Cole placed 2 20s and a 10 on the marble counter of Meridian Bistro, he expected change. What he got instead was his money flicked into the trash like contaminated waste, followed by a theatrical spray of disinfectant across the surface where his bills had touched. The floor manager, Renee Caldwell, didn't just refuse his money. She performed his humiliation for an audience. Phones rose like sentinels. A live stream began. And Darius Cole, a man whose net worth could buy the building twice over, stood perfectly still while the world watched a masterclass in casual cruelty. This is the story of what happened when the wrong person decided the wrong man wasn't worth basic human respect. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The lunch rush at Meridian Bistro moved with the precision of expensive machinery. Glass panels filtered October sunlight into geometric patterns across Italian marble floors. The open kitchen gleamed behind a brass-trimmed counter where artisanal sandwiches bore names like the Montgomery and Tuscan Reverie. Price points hovered around $40. The clientele matched. Business casual mixed with deliberately casual wealth. The kind of crowd that ordered $12 lattes without checking the menu. Darius Cole had walked through the beveled glass doors at exactly 12:47 p.m. He moved like a man accustomed to being watched, but indifferent to the watching. 6'2", lean build, charcoal wool coat over a slate gray sweater and dark jeans. His leather portfolio case was butter-soft and Italian, the kind of accessory that whispered rather than shouted. His face carried the particular stillness of someone who'd learned early that every expression would be read as evidence of something. He'd stood in line behind a woman in yoga wear arguing about almond milk temperature. Behind him, a college student with purple-streaked hair pulled out her phone, half scrolling, half people-watching. Her name was Kayla Brooks, sophomore at the urban campus 3 blocks north, and she had 47 followers on her personal live stream channel. 47 was about to become 40,000. Darius had ordered simply. The signature roast beef, no onions, black coffee. The counter associate, a young guy named Marcus with careful hands and careful eyes, had nodded. $14.50 for the sandwich, $3.33 for the coffee. Totals $17.83. Make it the lunch combo with the side salad. That brings you to $22.50. Perfect. Darius had also grabbed a bottled water from the cooler display, a bag of kettle chips, and a small container of mixed fruit from the refrigerated case. Marcus had rung it efficiently. $47.83. Darius laid down 2 20s and a 10. The transaction should have ended there. Should have been anonymous and forgettable, the kind of exchange that happens 10,000 times a day in 10,000 similar establishments. But Renee Caldwell had been watching from her position near the espresso station. She was 31, sharp-featured, with auburn hair pulled into a knot so tight it seemed punitive. Her name tag read Floor Manager in small capitals. She wore the same black button-down as the rest of the staff, but hers fit like armor. She'd been at Meridian for 4 years, working her way up from server to shift lead to management. She knew every regular by name. She knew which customers complained and which tipped heavy. She knew how to read a room, and she'd been reading Darius since he walked in. She'd watched him join the line, watched him stand with his hands loose at his sides, not checking his phone, not fidgeting, too comfortable, too at ease. In her experience, people who looked like Darius, black men in this tax bracket neighborhood, came through Meridian in 2 categories: delivery drivers picking up orders, or the occasional tech employee with a corporate card and a visitor badge. Darius wore no badge, carried no insulated delivery bag, and something in his calm struck her as presumption. She drifted closer as Marcus made change. $12.17 is your change, Marcus said, counting out a 10, 2 ones, and coins into Darius's palm. Darius had just closed his hand around the bills when Renee's voice cut across the counter space. I'll take it from here, Marcus. Marcus hesitated, glancing between them. I've got it, Ms. Caldwell. I said I'll handle it. Her smile stayed fixed, but her tone dropped 10 degrees. Marcus stepped back. Renee turned the smile on Darius. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach past the lips. Sir, I'm going to need to recount that. Darius met her eyes. Your associate already gave me the correct change. I'm sure he did, but policy requires a manager to verify transactions over $40. She extended her hand, palm up. Professional, reasonable. Darius held her gaze for a 3 count, then placed the bills and coins back onto the counter. Renee picked up the 10, held it to the light, examined it with exaggerated care, as though verifying a 50. She did the same with each single. The coins she pushed around with one manicured fingernail, separating them like evidence. Behind Darius, the line had stalled. Customers were noticing. Kayla Brooks, still half-focused on her phone, felt the shift in energy. She glanced up, saw the tableau at the counter, the manager performing some kind of inspection, the customer standing perfectly still. Something prickled at the back of her neck. She opened her live stream app. Just hanging at Meridian, she murmured to the camera, angling it subtly toward the counter. Lunch crowd weirdness happening. 3 viewers joined, then 7. Renee finished her theatrical count. She slid the bills back across the marble, but not toward Darius, toward the edge. Then, with a small, deliberate movement, she flicked them sideways, straight into the trash bin beside the register. The room inhaled. Darius didn't move, didn't blink. But something in the air crystallized, sharp enough to cut. Renee reached beneath the counter and produced a spray bottle of disinfectant. She misted the exact spot where Darius's money had rested, then wiped it down with a paper towel in slow, deliberate circles. Health code, she said lightly. We maintain the highest standards. Marcus had gone pale. A server near the pickup window, a woman named Elena Cruz, stopped mid-reach for a plated sandwich. Her eyes widened. Kayla's phone was fully raised now. 23 viewers. 31. Darius's voice, when it came, was quiet, controlled. You just threw my change in the trash. I'm protecting our workspace. Renee disposed of the paper towel with a delicate pinch, as though it too were contaminated. We can't have unsanitary conditions. My money was unsanitary. I didn't say that. Her smile widened a fraction. But we do have protocols. Then I'd like to speak to your general manager. I'm the manager on duty. Corporate contact, then. Renee tilted her head, faux sympathetic. I'm afraid that information isn't available to the general public. Privacy policies. It was a lie. Corporate contact information was printed on a card beside the register, visible from where Darius stood. He didn't point that out. Not yet. So you're refusing to provide a way for me to file a complaint. I'm following company policy. She glanced past him, addressing the line. I apologize for the delay, everyone. We're handling a situation. The framing was deliberate. A situation, not a wronged customer. A problem to be managed. Darius reached slowly into his coat pocket. Renee's hand moved to the phone at her hip. Sir, I'm going to need you to keep your hands visible. I'm getting my wallet. Please do it slowly. He withdrew a slim leather wallet, opened it, and produced a credit card. Black metal. No visible branding. He placed it on the counter, carefully avoiding the disinfected zone. Run the original transaction again. Keep the change this time. Renee made no move toward the card. I don't think that's going to work. Why not? Because I'm not comfortable processing this transaction. The statement hung in the air like a verdict. Elena Cruz, still frozen near the pickup counter, felt her stomach drop. She'd seen this before. Different manager, different restaurant, same script. The polite words that meant, get out. Darius picked up his card, returned it to his wallet. On what grounds are you refusing service? I have the right to refuse service to anyone who makes the staff uncomfortable. I haven't raised my voice, haven't made any threats. I placed an order and paid in cash. You're creating a disturbance. By standing here. By refusing to accept that I've handled the situation. Kayla's live stream hit 60 viewers. The comments were starting to flow. Is this for real? What just happened? She threw his money away? Darius glanced around the dining room. Phones were up now, plural. A man in a suit near the window had his camera aimed directly at the counter. A woman with a toddler in a high chair was recording with one hand while shushing her child with the other. I'd like the number for your district supervisor, Darius said, and I'd like you to leave. I'm a paying customer. You haven't paid. I threw away your money, remember? Her smile turned almost playful. So technically you still owe us $47.83. Marcus looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Darius drew a slow breath. Let it out. So if I pay again, with a card, will you process the order? Renee pretended to consider. I don't think I can do that in good conscience. Not when there's clearly been tension. Tension you created. That's your interpretation. It's what happened. Sir, you're becoming argumentative. It was a masterclass in gaslighting, performed with an audience. Take someone's dignity, then frame their objection as aggression. Darius's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. I'm going to ask one more time, he said. May I speak to someone above you in the management chain? Renee's hand moved to the walkie-talkie clipped to her belt. Marcus, call security. We have an increasingly hostile situation at the front counter. Ms. Caldwell, he hasn't done anything. Now, Marcus. The young man's hand shook as he reached for the phone. Kayla's stream exploded. 140 viewers. 200. A voice from the back of the line. This is insane. He just tried to buy lunch. Renee's gaze snapped toward the speaker, a white woman in a blazer. Ma'am, please don't interfere with staff operations. Staff operations? You threw his change in the trash. I saw it. I maintained hygiene standards. That's not... The woman stopped, catching Darius's slight headshake. He mouthed, It's okay. It wasn't okay, but escalation wouldn't help. The front door opened. A man in a gray uniform shirt stepped through, building security, name tag reading J. Williams. Mid-50s, stocky, the weariness of someone who'd broken up too many pointless conflicts. Got a call about a disturbance? Renee's voice shifted, suddenly anxious, suddenly smaller. Yes, thank God you're here. This man has been harassing me and refusing to leave. Williams looked at Darius, looked at the line of customers, several still filming, looked back at Renee. What happened? He became verbally aggressive when I asked him to step aside so I could serve other customers. That's a lie, the woman in the blazer said sharply. She threw his money away and sprayed disinfectant like he was contaminated. Williams' expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. That true? I've followed health protocols, Renee said, and he's been standing here arguing for 5 minutes, disrupting service. Williams turned to Darius. Sir, what's your side? Darius's voice remained level. I ordered food, paid cash. She threw my change in the trash, refused to provide corporate contact information, and called you when I asked to speak to a supervisor. Did you threaten anyone? No. Raise your voice? No. Williams looked at Marcus. That accurate? The young man swallowed hard, glanced at Renee. She was staring at him with the intensity of someone communicating very clear expectations. I don't want to get involved. You're already involved, son. What happened? Marcus's voice came out barely above a whisper. He just ordered food. Renee's jaw tightened. Williams sighed. It was the sigh of a man who'd been doing this job too long. Ma'am, if he just ordered food and paid, I'm not sure what you want me to do here. He's trespassing. Is he? Or did he try to buy lunch? I have the right to refuse service. You do. But you also called me saying he was aggressive and threatening. He doesn't look aggressive to me. Are you saying I'm lying? I'm saying the situation doesn't match the call. Renee's face flushed. She turned back to Darius, and for just a second, the mask slipped. Pure contempt flashed across her features before the professional smile snapped back into place. Fine. You want your change? She reached into the trash bin, plucked out the bills with 2 fingers like they were soiled bandages, and slapped them onto the counter. There. Transaction complete. Now leave. Darius looked at the crumpled bills, at the woman who just humiliated him in front of 50 strangers and several hundred live stream viewers, at the security guard who wanted no part of this, at Marcus, who couldn't meet his eyes. He picked up the money, smoothed it, folded it carefully, and placed it in his wallet. I'd still like corporate contact information. Jesus Christ, Renee hissed. You got your money? What more do you want? Accountability. The word landed like a gavel. Renee laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. You want to complain to corporate because I maintained health standards? Good luck with that. I want to file a formal complaint about discriminatory service. Discriminatory. She repeated the word like it tasted funny. That's a serious accusation. It's an accurate one. Based on what? The fact that I cleaned my workspace? Based on the fact that you treated me different than you treat everyone else. I treat everyone with professionalism. As if summoned by cosmic irony, the door chimed. A white man in a tailored navy suit walked in, mid-50s, silver hair, expensive watch. He approached the counter, oblivious to the tension. Renee's entire demeanor transformed. Good afternoon, Mr. Hendricks. Your usual? Her voice was honey, warmth, delight. Please, Renee, and add one of those almond croissants. My daughter loved them last time. Of course. I'll make sure it's fresh from the back. She was already moving, already processing, already smiling like nothing had happened 30 seconds ago. Mr. Hendricks handed her a $50 bill. Renee took it without hesitation. No inspection, no light holding, no disinfectant. She made change, counted it into his hand with a gentle touch, and sent him off with a warm, "Enjoy your afternoon." Then she turned back to Darius. The warmth evaporated. Are we done here? Kayla's stream had 400 viewers now. The comments were a flood. Did everyone just see that? She literally just took that guy's money, no problem. This is so messed up. Someone call the news. Darius pulled his phone from his pocket, opened the camera app, aimed it at the register area where the corporate contact card was clearly visible. Sir, no photography of staff areas. He snapped the photo, lowered the phone. Public information, publicly displayed. Renee's hand went back to her walkie. I'm calling the police. Williams held up a hand. Ms. Caldwell, maybe we should... He's harassing me. He's taking unauthorized photographs. I want him arrested for trespassing. Ma'am, he's not... Call them. Williams looked at Darius with something like apology in his eyes. Then he pulled out his own phone. Darius didn't move, didn't argue. He simply stood there, a man whose worst crime was expecting to be treated like a human being. The dining room had gone completely still. Every eye on the tableau at the counter. Elena Cruz, who'd been watching from the pickup station, finally found her voice. Renee, maybe we should just... Stay out of this, Elena. I'm just saying, he didn't do anything. I said stay out of it. Elena's hands curled into fists at her sides. She'd been working at Meridian for 2 years. She'd seen Renee freeze out servers who pushed back, seen her write up employees for invented infractions, seen her turn the floor into a kingdom where her word was law and questioning her was treason. But this was different. This wasn't a scheduling dispute or a uniform violation. This was cruelty, performed with an audience, and Elena knew exactly why it was happening. Darius checked his watch. A simple gesture, but Renee's eyes narrowed. Somewhere you need to be? Just noting the time for my records. Your records. Discrimination complaints require documentation. You're not filing anything. I am. I'll be contacting the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the State Civil Rights Division, and an attorney who specializes in public accommodation law. Renee's smile turned sharp. You think you're going to sue us because I cleaned a counter? I think I'm going to report a pattern of behavior that violates both state and federal law. Pattern? She laughed. You've been here 10 minutes. I've been watching for longer than that. Something flickered in her expression. Uncertainty, quickly suppressed. Watching, she repeated. Observing, Darius corrected. The way you interact with different customers, the tone shifts, the body language. It's textbook. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. The front door opened again. This time, it was a woman in a charcoal pantsuit, mid-40s, carrying a clipboard and an expression of barely contained irritation. Her ID badge swung on a lanyard, DEPT of Health Inspector. She looked around the dining room with the assessing gaze of someone trained to spot violations, then walked directly to the counter. I'm here for your scheduled inspection, she announced. Who's the manager on duty? Renee's face went blank. I'm sorry. Our inspection isn't until next week. The inspector checked her clipboard. Says here it's today. October 19th, 12 to 2 p.m. window. There must be a mistake. Is there a mistake in your records or in the health department's? The inspector's tone suggested she didn't care which. Renee's mouth opened, closed. The inspector looked past her, noticed the trash bin beside the register, the one where she'd thrown Darius's money. Noticed the spray bottle of disinfectant sitting out on the counter, label facing away. Is that cleaning solution stored in proximity to food service areas without proper containment? It's just, we were cleaning. I'll need to see your sanitation logs. The inspector was already moving past the counter into the kitchen space. And your cold storage temperature records. And your employee health certification files. Renee shot a desperate glance at Marcus. Get me the binders, now! The young man scrambled toward the back office. The inspector paused, turned back. Also, I'm seeing several customers with phones out. Is there an incident I should be aware of? Every eye in the room turned to Renee. Darius spoke before she could. The manager and I had a disagreement about service. The inspector's gaze sharpened on him, then on Renee, then on the trash bin. A disagreement. I'm handling it, Renee said quickly. By calling the police? The inspector had noticed Williams on his phone near the door. He was trespassing. Was he? Or did he try to order food? The inspector's expression suggested she'd walked into enough restaurant disputes to recognize the shape of this one. Before Renee could answer, Williams approached, phone still in hand. Ma'am, dispatch is asking for details about the threat. He was verbally aggressive. Specifically, what did he say that was threatening? Renee's mouth worked. He said he was going to file complaints. Williams blinked. That's the threat? That he's going to file paperwork? He was hostile. Was he? The inspector cut in. Because from what I am seeing, you're the one who escalated this situation. The room was a powder keg. Phones still recording, viewers still climbing. Somewhere in the back, Marcus was frantically searching for documentation that might or might not exist in the required format, and Darius Cole stood in the center of it all, perfectly still, perfectly composed, waiting for the moment when everything would shift. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen. A text from his attorney. Documents filed. It's official. You now own Meridian Bistro. Congratulations. He didn't smile, didn't react, just slipped the phone back into his pocket. The inspector was grilling Renee about hand-washing protocols. Williams was trying to de-escalate the police call. Customers were whispering, filming, watching the drama unfold. Kayla's live stream hit 1,000 viewers. And Darius realized with perfect clarity that this moment, this exact confluence of humiliation, exposure, and audience, was about to become the inflection point. Not for him. For Meridian Bistro. For Renee Caldwell. For every person in this room who was learning, in real time, what happened when casual cruelty met consequence. The inspector emerged from the kitchen, clipboard dense with notes. Her expression was grim. I'm seeing multiple violations. Temperature logs incomplete. Expired certifications. Cross-contamination risks in your storage protocols. She looked at Renee. This is going to require a follow-up inspection and possible fines. Renee had gone pale. We've never had a problem before. You have a problem now. Williams's radio crackled. A voice. Unit 23, we have officers 2 minutes out for the trespass call at Meridian Bistro. The inspector's eyebrows rose. You called the police on a customer during a health inspection? He was... Renee stopped. There was no good end to that sentence. The inspector made a note on her clipboard. I'm going to recommend a full review of your operational practices. This level of chaos suggests systemic issues. She wasn't wrong. The front door opened one more time. 2 police officers stepped through, both young, both assessing the scene with the practiced wariness of cops who knew restaurant calls could go sideways. The first officer, name tag reading Morrison, approached Williams. You the one who called? No, sir. I'm building security. The manager called. Morrison looked at Renee. You reported a trespassing suspect? Renee straightened, trying to reclaim authority. Yes, that man. She pointed at Darius. He's been harassing staff and refusing to leave. Morrison looked at Darius. noted his posture, his clothes, his complete lack of threatening behavior. "Sir, what's your side?" Darius met his eyes. "I tried to buy lunch." She threw my change in the trash and called it a health code issue. When I asked for corporate contact information to file a complaint, she called security. When security didn't remove me, she called you. Morrison's partner, Officer Chen, was already scanning the room, noting the phones, the inspector with her clipboard, the server near the pickup counter who looked like she wanted to scream. "Ma'am," Morrison said to Renee, "did this man threaten you or anyone else?" "He was verbally aggressive." "Specifically?" "He raised his voice." "I didn't," Darius said quietly. Morrison looked at the crowd. "Anyone hear him yell or threaten anyone?" Silence. Then the woman in the blazer. "He never raised his voice. He was calm the whole time. She's the one who threw his money away." Another voice. "I got it on video if you want to see." Chen pulled out a notepad. "We're going to need statements." Renee's face had gone from pale to flushed. "This is insane."
"I'm the victim here." "Ma'am, I'm not seeing a victim," Morrison said. "I'm seeing a service dispute that got blown out of proportion." "He was trespassing. He tried to buy food. That's not trespassing." The inspector stepped forward. "Officers, I'm conducting a health inspection. This establishment is currently showing multiple violations, and the manager just disrupted my process by creating this incident. I'm going to need to note this in my report as evidence of unstable management practices." Renee looked like she'd been slapped. Morrison sighed, the sigh of someone who could see exactly how this was going to play out. "Ma'am, I'm not arresting someone for trying to order a sandwich." "But did he touch you?" "No, but threaten you?" "Not in those exact words. Then there's no crime here." Morrison looked at Darius. "Sir, do you want to press charges for anything that happened?" Darius was silent for a long moment. Then, "Not yet." The "yet" hung in the air like a promise. Chen was taking names and numbers from witnesses. The inspector was photographing the kitchen. Williams was radiating profound relief that this wasn't going to end with someone in handcuffs. And Renee Caldwell stood behind her counter, watching her authority crumble in real time. Darius reached into his coat, slowly, deliberately. Every eye tracked the movement. He withdrew his leather portfolio, unzipped it with care, and from an inner pocket, he pulled out a single business card. He placed it on the marble counter, carefully avoiding the disinfected zone, and slid it toward Renee. She stared at it like it might explode. Then she picked it up. "Read it." And the blood drained from her face so fast she swayed. "Darius Cole, CEO, Cole. Hospitality Acquisitions." Her lips formed words. No sound came out. Darius spoke into the silence, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, I am the owner of Meridian Bistro. The sale closed through a third-party LLC, which is why the staff wasn't notified. I was conducting what's called an operational assessment, walking through as a regular customer to see how the business actually runs." He let that sink in. "What I found was a floor manager who discriminates based on race, lies to customers about policy, creates hostile environments, and calls the police on paying patrons to cover her own misconduct." Renee's hand was shaking. The business card fluttered. Morrison and Chen had gone very still. The inspector was staring at Darius with something between shock and vindication, and Kayla's live stream, now at 2,000 viewers, was watching a woman's entire world collapse in high definition. Darius reached back into the portfolio, pulled out a folder. "I also have 3 months of security camera footage showing a pattern of differential treatment, complaints from former employees about your behavior, and health inspection records that show violations were noted but not followed up on because you have a friend in the previous ownership group who made calls." He set the folder on the counter. "The health department will be very interested in that last part." The inspector's pen was moving fast. Renee tried to speak, choked, tried again. "You can't." "I can," Darius said, "and I am." He looked at Morrison. "Officer, I don't want to press charges, but I do want it on record that this incident happened, that multiple witnesses observed it, and that it's part of a documented pattern." Morrison nodded slowly. "We'll file a report." Darius looked at the inspector.
I'm requesting a full operational review. Everything, top to bottom. She smiled, thin and satisfied. Already planned. Then he turned back to Renee. You have a choice. You can resign, effective immediately, with a neutral reference, or I can terminate you for cause, which will include all of this. He gestured at the room, the phones, the officers, the chaos, in your employment record. Renee's eyes were wet. Her voice came out strangled. You're firing me because I did my job. Your job was to serve customers. You chose to humiliate one. I didn't. You threw my money in the trash. You sprayed disinfectant where I touched. You lied about policy. You called security, then police, because I asked for accountability. And you did it all in front of witnesses and cameras because you thought I was powerless. He leaned forward slightly. You were wrong. The silence in Meridian Bistro was absolute. Somewhere in the back, a timer beeped. No one moved to silence it. Renee's face crumpled. I have a mortgage. I have bills. You should have thought of that before you decided humiliation was part of your customer service model. Please, resign or be terminated. You have 60 seconds to decide. Her mouth worked. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for allies, for escape, for anything. She found none of it. She swallowed. I resign. Darius nodded. I need it in writing. Marcus, who'd been standing frozen near the register, wordlessly handed her a slip of paper and a pen. Renee's hand shook so hard the pen barely worked, but she wrote it. 3 sentences, signed it, slid it across the counter. Darius picked it up, read it, folded it, and placed it in his portfolio. You can collect your personal items from the office. Security will escort you out. Williams stepped forward, gentle but firm. Ma'am. Renee looked at Darius one last time. Her face was a ruin of rage and humiliation and disbelief. You're going to regret this, she whispered. No, Darius said quietly. I don't think I will. She walked toward the back, Williams beside her, and the dining room watched her disappear through the kitchen doors. The moment she was gone, the room exhaled. Chen closed his notepad. Sir, we'll need your full statement for the report. Of course. Morrison looked at the crowd. Anyone else who witnessed the incident and wants to provide a statement, we'll be here for another 20 minutes. Half a dozen hands went up. The inspector approached Darius. Mr. Cole, I'm going to need to schedule a comprehensive follow-up inspection. Given what I've seen today, I'm issuing a conditional pass with mandatory corrections required within 30 days. Understood. I'll have my operations team coordinate with your office. She nodded, respect clear in her expression. For what it's worth, I'm glad someone's holding this place accountable. As she walked away, Elena Cruz approached the counter. Her eyes were bright, her voice shaking. Mr. Cole, I just want to say thank you. He looked at her, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion, the relief, the fear leaving her shoulders. How long have you worked here? 2 years. And how long has this been a problem? She didn't pretend not to understand. The whole time. He nodded slowly. Would you be willing to give a formal statement about the work environment? Yes, absolutely yes. Good, because I'm going to need people who know how this place really operates. Her eyes widened. You're not shutting it down? No, I'm fixing it. He looked around the dining room, at the customers still filming, still processing, at Marcus, who looked like he'd witnessed a miracle, at the line of people who'd come for lunch and gotten a front row seat to justice. Everyone who was in line when this started, Darius said, raising his voice slightly, your meals are free today. Stay, order, enjoy, on the house. A beat of stunned silence. Then someone started clapping. It spread. Slow at first, then building. Not for long. This wasn't a movie, but genuine. The kind of applause that meant we saw what you did, and it mattered. Darius didn't smile, didn't acknowledge it, just picked up his portfolio and walked toward a table by the window. Sat down, opened his folder of documentation, and started making notes for everything that was about to change. Marcus approached, tentative. Sir, can I get you anything? Darius looked up. The roast beef sandwich I ordered, black coffee, and the side salad. Right away. As Marcus hurried toward the kitchen, Kayla Brooks ended her live stream. 3,000 viewers. The comments were still flooding in. She walked over to Darius's table. Mr. Cole? I'm Kayla. I recorded most of what happened. If you need the footage for anything. He took her phone numbers. Thank you. I might. She nodded and walked away, still shaking. Darius sat in the window light waiting for his lunch and thought about the fact that $47.83 had just bought him a restaurant, exposed a pattern of discrimination, and proved that sometimes the person you underestimate is the one holding all the cards. His sandwich arrived 10 minutes later. It was excellent. The sandwich tasted like victory, though Darius would never say that out loud. He ate methodically, reviewing the documentation spread across his table while the restaurant hummed with a nervous new energy around him. Customers who'd stayed were talking in hushed clusters, phones still out, replaying footage, texting friends. The story was already spreading beyond these walls, carried on digital wings to places Darius couldn't control and didn't need to. Marcus approached with a coffee refill, his hand steadier now, but his eyes still carrying the weight of what he'd witnessed. Mr. Cole, I wanted to apologize for not speaking up sooner. Darius looked up from his notes. You spoke when it mattered. That took courage. I should have said something the first time I saw her do that to someone. The first time? Marcus's face tightened. There were others, not exactly like today, but she had ways of making people feel small, especially if they didn't look like they belonged here. He gestured vaguely at the pristine dining room, the marble and brass, the $40 sandwiches. I needed this job. I couldn't afford to make waves. And now? Now I don't know if I still have a job. Darius closed his folder. Marcus, how long have you worked here? 11 months. Any write-ups? Complaints? No, sir. Do you show up on time? Do your work? Treat people with respect? I try to. Then you still have a job. What you don't have anymore is a manager who makes you choose between your paycheck and your conscience. Darius took a sip of coffee. I'm going to need people who actually care about doing this right. You interested? The young man's eyes widened. Yes, absolutely yes. Good. Finish your shift. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. As Marcus walked away, Elena Cruz materialized at the table's edge. She'd changed out of her server apron into street clothes, jeans, a faded university sweatshirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago, but she hadn't left. Mr. Cole, do you have a minute? He gestured to the empty chair. She sat, folding her hands on the table like she was preparing for confession. I don't know what you're planning to do with this place, but I need to tell you something. What happened today with Renee? That wasn't isolated. That was just the first time someone had the power to call her out on it. Tell me. Elena took a breath. 6 months ago, we had a server named Jerome, black kid, 23, putting himself through community college. Renee rode him constantly, uniform violations that didn't exist, attitude problems when he smiled too much or not enough. She wrote him up 3 times in 2 weeks, all for subjective stuff that couldn't be proven or disproven. He quit before she could fire him. Did he file a complaint? With who? The owners were barely here. Corporate HR was just a voicemail box that never called back. And Renee made it clear that if you caused trouble, you'd be gone and blackballed at every restaurant in a 3-mile radius. She had friends, connections. She knew people at the other hospitality groups in this district. Darius made a note. Who else? There was Maria, hostess. She was undocumented and Renee knew it. Used to make comments about calling immigration whenever Maria pushed back on anything. Maria worked scared for 8 months before she just stopped showing up. Anyone else? Elena's voice dropped. Me. Darius set down his pen. I'm good at my job, she said quietly. I move tables fast. I upsell without being pushy. My customer ratings are top tier. But I'm also Latina, and Renee never let me forget it. Comments about how I should work at the taco place down the street. Questions about whether I really understood wine descriptions when customers asked for recommendations. Little cuts, every shift, designed to make me feel like I didn't belong in a place this nice. Why did you stay? Because the tips are good. Because my daughter needs braces and soccer fees and a college fund. Because I'm 36 years old and starting over somewhere else means losing seniority, losing the good shifts, losing insurance. She met his eyes. Because I told myself it wasn't that bad, that I was being too sensitive, that if I just kept my head down and did good work, eventually it would get better. Did it? No, it just got quieter. Darius leaned back, processing. If I asked you to document everything, dates, incidents, witnesses, could you do it? Yes. Even knowing it might mean legal action, investigations, people getting deposed and questioned? Elena's jaw set, especially knowing that. He slid a business card across the table. Call my office Monday morning. Ask for Carla Chen. She's my HR director. Tell her I sent you and that you're willing to provide a full statement. She'll set up a formal interview. Elena took the card, her hand trembling slightly. Are you really going to change things here? I'm going to try, but I need people who will tell me the truth about how bad it actually is. People who aren't afraid of repercussions. I'm not afraid anymore, she said, and the way she said it made Darius believe her. After she left, Darius spent another hour at his window table, making calls and cross-referencing documentation. His attorney, Michael Pryor, picked up on the first ring. I saw the live stream, Michael said without preamble. 3,000 viewers and climbing. Twitter's already got hashtags. You're trending in the local market. Wasn't the plan. Plans change. How do you want to handle this? Carefully. I don't want this to turn into a publicity stunt. I want actual change. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. You can leverage the attention to make the change stick. Michael's voice shifted into lawyer mode. I'm already drafting a statement for when the press calls. And they will call. We position this as a new ownership commitment to inclusive culture and operational excellence. We don't throw Renee under the bus publicly, but we make it clear that discriminatory behavior has no place in any Cole hospitality property. She threw herself under the bus. I just happened to own the bus. Michael's laugh was sharp. I'm using that line. Listen, we need to talk about exposure. That live stream is evidence, but it also opens you up to defamation claims if Renee decides to fight back. Let her try. I've got documentation going back 3 months, witness statements from current and former staff, and a health inspector who just handed the restaurant a conditional pass with violations. Any lawyer who takes her case will tell her to settle quietly. Probably, but you never know what people will do when they're desperate and humiliated. Then we'll deal with it. What's the timeline on the operational review? Health department has 30 days to complete their follow-up inspection. I've got our hospitality consultants scheduled to come through tomorrow for a full audit. Staffing, procedures, supplier contracts, everything. You should also consider bringing in a workplace culture specialist to do confidential interviews with the entire staff. Darius made notes. Set it up. And Michael? I want a zero-tolerance policy written into every employment contract. Discrimination, harassment, retaliation, any of it is immediate termination with cause. No warnings, no second chances. That's aggressive. It's necessary. After the call ended, Darius sat in the late afternoon light and watched the restaurant continue its strange, limping operation. Marcus was handling the register with newfound confidence. The kitchen staff, having heard whispers of what happened, was working with unusual focus. Customers came and went, some clearly there for the food, others there to see the place where the viral video happened. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Kayla Brooks from earlier. My stream hit 50K views. People are asking for follow-up. Would you be willing to do a short interview? Darius considered. Deleted a response. Wrote another. Deleted that too. Finally. Not yet. But I'll keep you posted if things change. Thank you for documenting what happened. Her reply came fast. Thank you for what you did. My mom's a housekeeper at a hotel downtown. She said she wished someone had done that for her. He stared at the message for a long moment, then pocketed the phone. The door chimed. Darius looked up to see a man in his 60s enter, silver hair immaculate, charcoal suit perfectly tailored, the kind of presence that commanded rooms without effort. He scanned the dining area with the assessing gaze of someone who'd spent a lifetime evaluating properties and people, then walked directly to Darius's table. Mr. Cole, I presume. Darius stood, extending his hand. You have me at a disadvantage. Richard Ashford. I sit on the board of the Downtown Hospitality Alliance. I also happen to own 3 restaurants within a 6-block radius. His handshake was firm, professional, and carried the weight of someone used to being taken seriously. May I? Darius gestured to the chair Elena had vacated. Ashford sat with the careful precision of someone whose back wasn't what it used to be. I heard about what happened here today. Got 3 phone calls in the last hour. 2 from colleagues, 1 from my daughter who saw the video and wanted to know if I knew you. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've made quite an impression. Not intentionally. The best impressions rarely are. Ashford folded his hands on the table. I'm going to be direct, because that's how I operate, and because I suspect you appreciate directness. What happened today was unfortunate, but it's also exactly the kind of incident that can sink a business. Viral videos have a way of defining places in ways that facts don't. Meridian just became that restaurant where the racist manager worked in the public consciousness. Fair or not, that's a very difficult narrative to overcome. I'm aware. Are you? Because from where I sit, you just bought a restaurant with a PR nightmare attached to it, a compromised reputation, a demoralized staff, and health violations that suggest deeper operational problems. Most people would cut their losses, rebrand under a new name, and start fresh. Darius met his gaze. Is that what you'd do? 5 years ago? Absolutely. Today? Ashford's expression shifted, something like respect flickering across his features. Today, I'm not sure. The landscape has changed. People care about this stuff now in ways they didn't used to. Accountability actually matters to consumers under 40. You might be able to turn this into something positive if you're smart about it. I'm not doing this for positive PR. Then why are you doing it? Because I could. The simple honesty of it seemed to catch Ashford off guard. He sat back, reassessing. You could have bought any number of properties. Why this one? Because I walked in here 3 times over the past month, each time dressed differently, presenting differently. I got 3 completely different levels of service. The 3rd time, today, I got what you saw on the live stream. That told me everything I needed to know about the culture here. Ashford nodded slowly. Operational assessment through direct experience. Smart, risky, but smart. The risk was calculated. Was it? Because you walked into a situation where you could have been arrested, assaulted, or worse. Black man in an upscale establishment, conflict with management, police called. That's a recipe for tragedy, not just humiliation. I know what it's a recipe for. I've lived in this country long enough to understand the risks. Darius's voice was quiet, but steel ran through it. That's exactly why I did it. Because if the owner, a man with resources, documentation, and lawyers, can be treated like that in his own establishment, what happens to everyone else who doesn't have those protections? Ashford was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. My daughter told me something after she watched that video. She said, "Dad, that could have been Uncle James." He paused. James is my brother-in-law. Harvard MBA, runs a successful consulting firm, lives in a house twice the size of mine. And she's right. It could have been him. It could have been any number of people I know and respect who get treated like they don't belong in spaces they've earned the right to occupy. So what are you doing about it? The question landed like a challenge. Ashford smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. I'm sitting here talking to you, aren't I? The Downtown Hospitality Alliance has been trying to address these issues through policy recommendations and diversity training mandates. We've had limited success because most owners see it as box checking rather than culture change. But if you actually pull this off, if you turn Meridian into a model for what inclusive hospitality looks like, you'll do more to shift the industry than 1,000 training seminars. That's a lot of pressure for one restaurant. Welcome to being a symbol whether you wanted to be one or not. Ashford pulled out his phone, thumbed through his contacts. I'm going to send you the name of a consultant who specializes in organizational culture transformation. She's expensive, she's blunt, and she doesn't take excuses. She's also brilliant. If you're serious about this, you'll call her. I'm serious. Then you should also know that you're going to face pushback, not just from Renee. She's finished in this industry, but from people who think you handled this wrong. People who'll say you were looking for a confrontation. People who'll claim this was a setup or a publicity stunt. The narrative gets messy fast when race and money and viral video intersect. Let it get messy. I've got the truth on my side. Truth is less powerful than you think when it's competing with comfortable lies. Ashford stood, buttoned his suit jacket. But I hope you prove me wrong. This industry needs what you're trying to do. It's needed it for a long time. They shook hands again, and Ashford walked out into the late afternoon sun. Darius sat alone, watching the shadows lengthen across the marble floor. The lunch rush was long over. The restaurant had gone quiet except for the soft clink of dishes being cleared, the murmur of kitchen staff breaking down stations, the electronic chime of the register closing out transactions. His phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Patricia Cole, his mother. He smiled for the first time all day and answered. "Hey, Mom. Darius Emmanuel Cole, did you buy a restaurant today and not tell your mother? How did you? Your cousin Shanice sent me a video. You're on the internet. 50,000 people have watched you get disrespected in public, and I had to find out from Facebook?" Her voice carried that particular blend of concern and exasperation that only mothers could perfect. "It wasn't planned, Mom. The purchase was planned. The rest just happened. Just happened. Baby, nothing just happens when you walk into a white establishment in a nice neighborhood. You know that." "I do. That's why I had documentation, witnesses, and a lawyer on standby. And if she'd pulled a gun instead of a trash stunt, if those police had decided you were a threat, you think your lawyer would have done you any good then?" The fear underneath her anger was palpable. Darius closed his eyes, knowing she was right, hating that she had to be right. "I was careful. Careful." She made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Your father used to say the same thing. I'll be careful, Patricia. Every time he went to a job site in a neighborhood that didn't want black contractors, every time he bid on a project against companies that played dirty, every time he walked into a room where he was the only one who looked like him. And you know what happened? Mom, he built a successful business. He proved them all wrong. And it ate him alive doing it. Stress, high blood pressure, working himself to exhaustion because he had to be twice as good to get half the credit." Her voice cracked. "I don't want that for you. I don't want you carrying the weight of changing an entire industry just because you can." "Then what do you want for me?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. "I want you to be happy. I want you to build things that bring you joy, not just justice. I want you to remember that you don't have to fix everything yourself." "But if I don't, who will?" "That's exactly what your father used to say." They sat with that for a while, the connection between them carrying more than words. Finally, his mother sighed. "So, a restaurant. Are you going to actually run it, or is this just another acquisition?" "I'm going to fix it. Turn it into something better than what it was." "Good, because if you're going to put yourself through this, it better mean something more than revenge." "It's not revenge, Mom. It's accountability. Sometimes the line between those is thinner than you think, baby. Just be careful, and not just physically careful. Guard your heart, too. This kind of fight can make you hard in ways that are difficult to undo." After they said their goodbyes, Darius sat in the gathering dusk and thought about his father. Thomas Cole had died 6 years ago, too young, his heart giving out after a lifetime of fighting battles that shouldn't have been necessary. He'd built a construction company from nothing, navigated decades of discrimination and setbacks, and left behind a legacy of excellence that Darius had built upon. But his mother was right. The cost had been enormous. Darius had inherited his father's drive, his strategic mind, his refusal to accept that spaces of power and wealth should remain closed to people who looked like them. He'd also inherited the weight of knowing that every success was scrutinized differently, every failure magnified, every misstep turned into evidence that he didn't belong. His phone buzzed. A message from Michael Pryor, FYI. "Local news wants an interview. Also got inquiries from 3 national outlets. How do you want to handle?" Darius typed, "No interviews yet. Issue a brief statement. New ownership committed to inclusive excellence. Full operational review underway. Details to follow." The response came quickly. Short and professional. Good call. Also, Renee's lawyer called. Darius's fingers paused over the keyboard. Already? She's threatening wrongful termination suit. Claims the resignation was coerced under duress. She resigned in front of police officers and witnesses after throwing a customer's money in the trash and calling law enforcement on someone trying to buy lunch. Let her lawyer explain how that's wrongful termination. That's what I told him. He's going to push for a settlement. No settlement. If she wants to litigate, we litigate. Every security video, every witness statement, every complaint from former staff goes into the record. Understood. This could get expensive. It's worth it. Because it was. Not for revenge, despite what some would think, but because settling would send a message that this behavior was negotiable, that enough legal pressure could make accountability disappear. Darius had learned from his father that some fights were worth the cost. The restaurant's front door opened one last time. Darius looked up to see a woman in her 50s, petite, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a professional bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore simple slacks and a blazer, carried a leather bag that had seen serious use, and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd been in 1,000 restaurants and knew exactly what to look for. She walked directly to his table. "Mr. Cole?" He stood. "Yes?" "Claire Morrison. Richard Ashford said you might be expecting my call. I decided to skip the phone tag and come in person." She extended her hand. "I'm the organizational culture consultant he mentioned." Her handshake was firm and brief. "That was fast," Darius said. "I was 3 blocks away meeting with another client when Richard texted. He said this was urgent, and having watched the video that's now been shared about 60,000 times, I agree." She glanced around the restaurant with clinical assessment. "May I sit?" "Please." Claire settled into the chair, pulled out a tablet, and opened it to a document already half filled with notes. "I've been doing this work for 23 years. I've seen every variation of toxic workplace culture you can imagine. What happened here today is textbook. Public humiliation as a power play, discriminatory service delivery, retaliation against complaints, and a management structure that enabled it all." She looked up. "The question is whether you're actually committed to fixing it or whether you just want the appearance of fixing it." "What's the difference?" "The difference is about $200,000, 6 months of intensive work, complete transparency with your staff, willingness to fire more people if necessary, and accepting that you're going to hear things about your business that will make you uncomfortable." She held his gaze. "Most owners say they want real change. What they actually want is a quick PR band-aid that makes the problem go away without disrupting operations or profits. I want real change." "Why?" The directness of it was refreshing. "Because I've been on the other side of that counter. Because I know what it feels like to be treated like your suspect just for existing. Because I have the resources and platform to do something about it, and not using them would be a waste." Claire studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Here's what real change looks like. 1. Every single employee gets interviewed confidentially about their experiences here. No repercussions for honesty. 2. We implement a transparent reporting system where complaints go to an outside party, not internal HR. 3. You commit to quarterly culture audits conducted by my team. 4. Any manager or supervisor who shows discriminatory behavior gets terminated immediately, no matter how profitable or popular they are. 5. You invest in ongoing training that isn't just legal compliance theater, actual skill building around inclusive service and unconscious bias recognition. Done. I'm not finished. 6. You accept that some of your longest tenured staff might need to go because they're part of the problem. 7. You acknowledge that this process will be messy, uncomfortable, and might hurt your bottom line in the short term. 8. You give me complete access to everything: financials, security footage, staff records, customer complaints, all of it. Anything else? Yes, you need to understand that fixing this restaurant is just the beginning. If you're building a hospitality portfolio, every property you acquire will be watched to see if this was genuine or performance. You'll be held to a higher standard than your competitors. Fair or not, that's reality. I can live with that. Claire's expression softened slightly. Then we start tomorrow. I'll need office space, access to staff schedules, and a list of everyone who's worked here in the past year, current and former employees. You'll have it. She stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. One more thing. That young woman who live streamed this, Kayla Brooks, she's getting interview requests. You should consider doing a joint statement with her, framed around transparency and accountability. It would signal that you're not trying to control the narrative. I'll think about it. Think fast. The story's already being written. Better to help shape it than watch it get shaped without you. After she left, Darius sat in the empty restaurant as the last of the daylight faded. Marcus was finishing the register closeout. The kitchen had gone quiet. Somewhere in the back office, he could hear someone stacking chairs. His phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Kyla. CNN reached out. They want to interview both of us. What do you think? Darius stared at the message, then at the restaurant around him, at the marble counter where his change had been thrown away, at the trash bin that had become a symbol, at the space that was now his to transform or waste. He typed, "Let's talk tomorrow. If we do this, we do it right." Her response was immediate. "Thank you for trusting me with this." He pocketed the phone and walked to the counter where it had all happened, ran his hand across the marble, cool and smooth under his fingers. The disinfectant smell was gone. The trash had been emptied. The surface looked pristine, like nothing had happened here at all. But something had happened. Something that couldn't be undone or erased. Something that was going to ripple outward in ways he couldn't fully control or predict. Darius thought about his mother's warning, about his father's legacy, about the weight of being a symbol when all you wanted to be was a man trying to do the right thing. Then he thought about Elena Cruz, who'd stayed silent for 2 years because she needed the paycheck. About Jerome, who'd quit rather than fight back. About Maria, who'd worked scared and eventually just disappeared. About every person who'd walked through these doors and been made to feel less than because of how they looked, or spoke, or where they came from. And he knew, with absolute clarity, that the discomfort ahead was worth it. Marcus approached, keys in hand. "Mr. Cole, I'm heading out. Is there anything else you need?" Darius turned from the counter. "Tomorrow morning, I want you to gather the entire staff. Everyone who's scheduled. Tell them there's going to be a meeting at 9 a.m. before we open. Attendance is mandatory but paid." "What should I tell them it's about?" "The truth. Tell them everything is about to change." Marcus nodded, uncertainty flickering across his young face. But beneath it, Darius saw something else. Hope. Maybe. Or the beginning of belief that things could actually be different. The young man left through the back entrance, and Darius heard the deadbolt click into place with a finality that felt appropriate. The day had ended. Tomorrow would begin something new. He locked up the front himself, testing the door twice, then stood on the sidewalk looking at the restaurant through the plate glass windows. Meridian Bistro. The name was etched in elegant script above the entrance, backlit and expensive. Inside, the marble gleamed under security lighting. It looked exactly as it had this morning when he'd walked in as a customer. But everything had changed. His phone buzzed as he walked to his car. A text from Claire Morrison with a document attached. Preliminary Assessment Framework. Review tonight. We start interviews at 7 a.m., 7 in the morning. The woman didn't waste time. Darius drove home through evening traffic, the city lights blurring past his windows while his mind cataloged everything that needed to happen in the next 72 hours. The operational audit, the staff interviews, the health department follow-up, the media strategy, the legal positioning in case Renee's threatened lawsuit materialized, the culture transformation that would take months to implement properly. His condo was dark when he arrived, 23 floors above the city with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the skyline into abstract art. He'd bought it 3 years ago, right after Cole Hospitality Acquisitions had closed its first major deal. The space was beautiful and impersonal, expensive furniture chosen by a designer, art selected for investment value, everything pristine and untouched in a way that suggested no one actually lived there. He dropped his portfolio on the kitchen island, poured 2 fingers of bourbon, and pulled up the video on his phone. Watching himself getting humiliated was surreal. The camera angle from Kayla's phone caught everything. Renee's theatrical money inspection, the deliberate flick into the trash, the disinfectant spray, the smile that was pure malice. His own face in the frame was eerily calm, controlled in a way that he knew from experience cost more than it looked. The comments section had exploded. 68,000 views now. The top comment, with 4,000 likes, read, "This is what systemic racism looks like. Not burning crosses, just a woman with a spray bottle and the confidence that she'll face no consequences." Someone had created a hashtag, #Meridian Accountability. There were think pieces already being written, he could tell. Social justice advocates claiming this as evidence of endemic discrimination. Conservative commentators probably preparing their "he was looking for a fight" takes. Everyone with an opinion, an angle, a way to make this story fit their preferred narrative. Darius closed the app and opened Claire's document instead. The assessment framework was brutally thorough. Individual interviews with every current employee, structured around 57 questions designed to surface patterns of discrimination, harassment, favoritism, and fear-based management. Anonymous surveys for customers who'd visited in the past 6 months. Review of all disciplinary actions taken in the past 2 years. Analysis of promotion patterns, scheduling equity, and compensation disparities. Full audit of supplier relationships to identify potential kickback schemes or nepotism. It was going to be invasive and uncomfortable, and exactly what was needed. He was making notes in the margins when his phone rang. Michael Pryor, calling at 9:30 at night. "Tell me you're not still working," Darius said. Says the man who's definitely still working. Michael's voice carried the particular exhaustion of someone who'd spent the day putting out fires. "Quick update. Renee's attorney backed off the wrongful termination threat after I sent him a preview of the documentation we have. He's now requesting a confidential settlement in exchange for a non-disparagement agreement." "How much?" $50,000. "No." "Darius, it's cheaper than litigation." "I don't care. We're not paying her to be quiet about her own behavior. She can sign a non-disparagement agreement with no payment, or she can face discovery where every employee she ever mistreated gets to give testimony." Michael was quiet for a moment. "You know this is going to cost more than $50,000 in legal fees if she fights." "Then it does. Some things aren't about the money." Spoken like someone who has enough money to say that, but there was approval in Michael's voice. "I'll let her attorney know. Anything else?" "Yeah, I need you to draft an employee rights document. Simple language, 1 page, covering what constitutes discrimination, how to report it, what protections exist for people who come forward. I want it posted in every break room and given to every staff member tomorrow." "Consider it done. Also, the health inspector called my office. She wanted you to know that her report is going to be detailed and that she's recommending surprise follow-up inspections quarterly for the next year." "Good. Most restaurant owners would be upset about that." "Most restaurant owners didn't just watch their floor manager throw money in the trash on camera. I'll take the scrutiny." After the call ended, Darius stood at his windows looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Renee Caldwell was probably doing the same thing, staring at her own walls, processing the reality that her career in hospitality was over, that the video would follow her forever, that the power she'd wielded so casually had evaporated in minutes. He wondered if she understood why it had happened, if she grasped that the cruelty wasn't just unprofessional, but actively destructive, not just to him, but to everyone who'd ever been on the receiving end of her contempt. Or if she'd already reframed herself as the victim, the one unfairly targeted, the casualty of political correctness run amok. Probably the latter. People rarely saw themselves as the villains. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number he didn't recognize with a 212 area code. New York. He almost let it go to voicemail, then answered. "Mr. Cole?" A woman's voice, professional, crisp. "This is Jennifer Hartwell from the New York Times. I'm working on a story about the incident at Meridian Bistro, and I was hoping to get a statement from you." The New York Times. The story had traveled faster than he'd anticipated. "Ms. Hartwell, I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not giving interviews at this time." "I understand, but Mr. Cole, this story is going to be written with or without your input. I'd rather include your perspective than speculate about your motivations." It was a fair point, delivered without pressure. Darius made a split-second decision. "Off the record?" "Completely. What I did today wasn't a stunt. It was an assessment of how a business I'd just purchased actually operated. What I found was a pattern of discriminatory behavior that had been allowed to continue because there was no accountability. I'm committed to changing that culture, and I'm going to be transparent about the process. Can I quote any of that? You can quote this. Cole Hospitality Acquisitions is committed to creating inclusive, equitable environments in all our properties. What happened at Meridian was unacceptable, and we're taking comprehensive steps to ensure it never happens again. That's very diplomatic. It's also true. Mr. Cole, may I ask you something else? Still off the record. Go ahead. How did it feel standing there while she did that to you, knowing you could stop it at any moment but choosing not to? The question caught him off guard with its directness. He was silent for a long moment. Felt like every other time I've been treated like I don't belong somewhere. The only difference was I had the power to do something about it afterward. And the other times? I didn't. Jennifer Hartwell made a soft sound that might have been understanding. Thank you for your honesty. If you change your mind about an on-record interview, please call me directly. She gave him her cell number and hung up. Darius set the phone down and realized his hand was shaking slightly. The adrenaline from the day was finally catching up with him, the controlled calm giving way to the reality of what he'd put himself through. His mother was right. He could have been arrested, assaulted, worse. The fact that it had worked out didn't make the risk retroactively smart. But it had needed to happen. He slept poorly, his dreams full of marble counters and spray bottles and faces that looked at him like he was contamination. He woke at 5:30, gave up on more sleep, and went for a run along the river as dawn broke over the city. The physical exertion helped, sweat and movement burning off the residual tension until his mind was clear again. By 6:45, he was showered, dressed, and walking into Meridian Bistro's back entrance with a box of bagels and 2 gallons of coffee from the shop next door. Claire Morrison was already there, her car parked in the loading zone, her expression suggesting she'd been up as long as he had. "You're early," he said. "So are you. Good. We have a lot to do." She followed him inside, already pulling out her tablet. "I've set up interview stations in the private dining room in the office. I'll handle the one-on-ones while you do the staff meeting. Keep it short, keep it honest, and don't make promises you can't keep." "What should I promise?" "That you're listening, that changes are coming, that honesty won't be punished. Nothing more specific than that until we know what we're actually dealing with." The staff began arriving at 7:15. Darius watched them filter in through the back door. Marcus, Elena, 3 other servers he'd seen yesterday, 2 line cooks, a dishwasher, the hostess. They moved with the uncertainty of people who'd been summoned but didn't know why, grabbing coffee and bagels but not quite relaxing. By 8:50, 15 people were gathered in the dining room. The morning light slanted through the windows, turning the marble floor golden. Darius stood behind the counter where yesterday's confrontation had happened, deliberate in his positioning. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know some of you saw what happened here yesterday. For those who didn't, I'll give you the short version. I'm Darius Cole, and as of yesterday morning, I own this restaurant. I bought it through a third-party acquisition to assess how it actually operates. What I found was a management culture that allowed discrimination and mistreatment to flourish." The room was absolutely silent. Renee Caldwell is no longer employed here. That decision was based on documented pattern of discriminatory behavior, witnessed by multiple people and captured on video. This isn't about one bad day. It's about a fundamental failure of leadership and values. Elena was nodding slightly. Marcus looked like he was holding his breath. "Here's what's going to happen next. Over the next week, every one of you will be interviewed confidentially by Claire Morrison, the woman in the back." He gestured toward Claire, who'd positioned herself near the kitchen door. "These interviews are your opportunity to speak honestly about your experience working here. Nothing you say will result in retaliation. If you've witnessed discrimination, harassment, or unethical behavior, this is your chance to report it safely." A server named Jasmine raised her hand tentatively. "What if we don't want to participate?" "You're not required to, but I hope you will, because I can't fix problems I don't know about." Another hand went up, one of the line cooks, a stocky man with tattooed forearms whose name tag read Carlos. "Are you firing everyone and starting over?" No, I'm firing people who've created hostile work environments or engaged in discriminatory behavior. If that doesn't describe you, your job is safe. How do we know you're not just saying that? It was a fair question, delivered with the skepticism of someone who'd been lied to by management before. You don't, Darius said honestly. Not yet. I'm asking you to give me the chance to prove it through actions, not just words. But I understand if you need to see results before you trust the process. Carlos nodded slowly, not quite convinced, but willing to listen. One more thing, Darius continued. This restaurant is going to change. How we hire, how we train, how we treat customers and each other, all of it is under review. Some of you might not like the changes. Some of you might decide this isn't the place for you anymore. That's okay. But if you stay, I'm asking for your commitment to building something better than what existed before. A young hostess named Amber spoke up, her voice barely audible. What about the customers who saw the video? Are they going to think we're all racist? No, they're going to think we had a racist manager who's been fired. There's a difference. But what if they don't come back? Then we'll earn them back. One interaction at a time, one day at a time. We're going to become the place people talk about, not because something terrible happened here, but because we did the hard work of actually fixing it. He could see some people starting to believe him. Others still looked skeptical. That was fine. Skepticism was earned. Questions? Elena raised her hand. Are you going to promote from within or bring in outside management? Both. I need people who know how this place runs, but I also need fresh perspectives and expertise we don't currently have. If you're interested in management opportunities, let Claire know during your interview. Marcus spoke up. What happens to our schedules? Some of us have second jobs, school, kids. Nothing changes immediately. We'll honor existing schedules while we figure out what sustainable staffing looks like. But I'm going to be honest with you, some things will have to change. We're understaffed, which means people are working unsustainable hours. That's not good for you or our customers. Are you hiring more people? Jasmine asked. Yes, and I'm raising base pay by 15% effective next week. That got a reaction. Eyes widened. Someone in the back whispered, Seriously? Seriously, you can't build a culture of respect while paying poverty wages. It doesn't work. Carlos was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Just like that? You're just raising everyone's pay? Just like that. Any other questions? The dishwasher, an older man named Ray who'd been silent until now, raised his hand. What about the health violations? Are we in trouble? The restaurant is. You individually are not. We're going to fix the issues the inspector found, implement better protocols, and submit to quarterly inspections. If you see something unsafe or unsanitary, you're going to have a direct line to report it without fear of being punished. To who? To an independent hotline managed by Claire's firm. Not to me, not to whoever ends up as general manager. Outside accountability. Ray nodded, satisfied. Darius looked around the room at the faces watching him, some hopeful, some wary, all of them waiting to see if this was real or just another manager making promises that would evaporate under pressure. I'm going to let Claire explain the interview process. After that, we're closed today for operational review. You'll all be paid for your scheduled shifts. We reopen tomorrow with the new policies in place. He stepped aside and let Claire take over. She was efficient and clear, explaining the interview structure, confidentiality protections, and timeline. People were taking notes, asking questions. The atmosphere had shifted from fearful to cautiously engaged. Darius stepped out into the kitchen and found himself alone for the first time all morning. The stainless steel surfaces gleamed under fluorescent lights. Someone had left a prep list on the counter, ingredients itemized in neat handwriting. Everything looked professional and clean, no obvious violations, but he knew from the inspector's report that problems lurked beneath the surface. His phone buzzed. A text from Kayla Brooks. CNN wants us tomorrow at 10 a.m., their studio downtown. Are you in? He stared at the message, weighing the risks and benefits. Going on national television would amplify the story exponentially. It would also cement him as the face of this moment, for better or worse. Every decision he made from here forward would be scrutinized through that lens. But Kayla had been the one to document what happened. She deserved to tell her part of the story, and doing it together would signal that he wasn't trying to control the narrative. He typed back, I'm in. Let's talk logistics this afternoon. The interview started at 9:30. Claire sat up in the private dining room while Darius worked in the office, reviewing supplier contracts and operational budgets. Through the door, he could hear the murmur of voices as staff members went in one by one to tell their stories. At 11:15, Claire emerged and closed the door behind her. Her expression was grim. "How bad?" Darius asked. "Bad." 3 separate servers described incidents where Renee made racial comments or jokes. 2 kitchen staff witnessed her berating an undocumented worker with threats to call immigration. One host said she was forced to seat certain customers in back sections based on how they looked. And that's just from the first 4 interviews. Darius felt his jaw tighten. Did anyone report this before? 2 people tried. Both were told by the previous ownership group that Renee was old school but effective and that they should just deal with it. Claire pulled up a document on her tablet. There's also a pattern of scheduling retaliation. People who pushed back on her got cut hours or stuck with all the worst shifts. Jesus. It gets worse. Elena Cruz mentioned a server named Jerome who quit 6 months ago. I tracked him down this morning. He's working at a coffee shop across town. He's willing to give a statement about systematic harassment that drove him out. How many others left because of her? At least 5 in the past year. That's a turnover rate of over 30% in an industry where 15% is normal. Claire sat down across from him. Darius, this wasn't just one bad manager. This was an entire operational culture that enabled her behavior because it was profitable in the short term. She moved tables fast, kept labor costs down by intimidating staff into not reporting violations, and the previous owners didn't care as long as the numbers looked good. Who were the previous owners? Davidson Group, small hospitality holding company, 4 properties in the metro area. They sold to you because Meridian was underperforming and they didn't want to invest in fixing it. So they dumped their problem on the market, and I bought it. Essentially, yes. Although I doubt they anticipated you'd actually address the underlying issues rather than just rebranding and moving on. Darius looked at the stack of interview notes Claire had accumulated. What do you recommend? Full transparency. Acknowledge the scope of the problem publicly. Commit to specific, measurable changes with external verification. Offer severance and support to anyone who left because of hostile work environment, and prepare for the fact that more issues are going to surface as people feel safe coming forward. How long will the interviews take? 2 more days for current staff. Then I want to interview the former employees who are willing. After that, we analyze patterns and build the remediation plan. Darius nodded. Do it. Whatever resources you need. Claire left to resume the interviews, and Darius turned back to the operational budgets. The numbers told their own story. High profit margins maintained through skeleton staffing, minimal training investment, supplier contracts that looked suspiciously cheap. Every corner that could be cut had been cut, and the savings had gone straight to the bottom line. No wonder the previous owners had been happy to sell. At 1:30, his phone rang. Michael Pryor, sounding uncharacteristically rattled. We have a problem. Darius's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Renee just posted a statement on Facebook. She's claiming she was set up, that you came in looking for a confrontation, and that the whole thing was a publicity stunt to justify cleaning house and bringing in your own people. Send me the link. 30 seconds later, Darius was reading Renee Caldwell's version of events. It was masterfully written, probably by her attorney, hitting every note of victimhood and persecution. She described herself as a dedicated professional who'd given 4 years to Meridian, who'd maintained health standards and professional service, who'd been ambushed by a new owner with an agenda. The comments section was already polarized, some people defending her, others calling her out. The video was being reshared, dissected, argued over. What do you want to do? Michael asked. Nothing. Nothing. Darius, she's calling you a liar in public. She's also contradicting herself. She claims she was maintaining health standards, but the health inspector cited violations. She says she was professional, but there's video of her throwing money in the trash. Let her statements speak for themselves. This is going to fuel the conspiracy theories that you orchestrated this for attention. Let them theorize. Anyone who watches the video with honest eyes knows what happened. We don't win by getting into a social media fight with her. We win by doing the work and proving through results that this was never about her. It was about fixing a broken system. Michael was quiet for a moment. You're either very smart or very idealistic. Can it be both? In theory, in practice, idealism gets expensive fast. After the call, Darius pulled up Renee's Facebook post again and read through the comments. One caught his eye, from a woman named Sarah Chen. I worked at Meridian 2 years ago. Renee was exactly as terrible as that video shows. She made my life hell for 6 months until I quit. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for finally holding her accountable. The comment had been liked 47 times. Other former employees were starting to add their own stories in the thread, creating a counter-narrative that was more powerful than anything Darius could have said himself. Sometimes the best response was to let the truth speak. Elena knocked on the office door frame. Mr. Cole, there's someone here to see you. Says she's from the Downtown Hospitality Alliance. Darius looked up to see a woman in her 40s, South Asian, wearing a professional pantsuit and carrying herself with the authority of someone used to being listened to. She extended her hand. Priya Sharma. I work with Richard Ashford. He asked me to drop off some resources he thought you might find useful. She handed him a folder thick with documents, model employee handbooks, diversity training programs, contact information for employment attorneys who specialized in discrimination cases, templates for transparent reporting systems. Richard mentioned you were serious about culture transformation, Priya said. These are the tools that actually work, based on implementations we've seen succeed across the industry. Thank you. That's generous. It's also strategic. The hospitality industry in this city has a reputation problem when it comes to inclusion and equity. If you succeed in turning Meridian around, it raises standards for everyone. If you fail spectacularly, it reinforces the narrative that real change is impossible. She smiled slightly. So we have a vested interest in your success. No pressure. Oh, there's enormous pressure, but Richard thinks you can handle it, and he's rarely wrong about people. She glanced around the office. You should also know that the Alliance is prepared to provide public support if you want it. Joint statement, endorsement of your approach, that kind of thing. What would that cost me? Priya laughed. Nothing except the expectation that you'll share what you learn. If this works, we want to replicate it. The industry needs models for how to do this right. After she left, Darius sat with the folder of resources and thought about the ecosystem forming around this moment. The consultant, the lawyer, the industry alliance, the reporter from the Times, the live streamer with 60,000 followers. Everyone had a stake in what happened next. Everyone watching to see if transformation was possible or if this was just another viral moment that would fade into the noise. The weight of it should have been crushing. Instead, he felt oddly energized. His phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. CNN confirmed. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Are you nervous? He typed back. Terrified. You? Same. But we've got this. Her confidence was reassuring. He sent back a thumbs up and returned to the operational budgets, making notes about where investments needed to happen. Better kitchen equipment, improved ventilation systems, updated point-of-sale software, expanded staff training programs. Claire finished the interviews at 4:30 and came to find him in the office. She looked exhausted. 15 interviews done. The patterns are clear and consistent. Renee created a culture of fear, particularly for staff of color and women who pushed back on her authority. The previous management enabled it by prioritizing profit over people, and customers experienced differential treatment based on perceived race and class. Can you quantify it? 8 current employees reported direct discrimination. 12 reported witnessing it happen to others. 5 left because of hostile work environment in the past year. Customer complaint records show a pattern of unresolved issues involving differential service. Claire pulled up a summary document. This is textbook hostile workplace combined with discriminatory public accommodation practices. What's the legal exposure? Significant. If former employees sue, if customers file civil rights complaints, if the state investigates, you're looking at potential 6-figure liability, maybe 7, depending on how many people come forward. But I just bought this place. The previous owners, you bought the business and its liabilities. Davidson Group is probably celebrating that they got out before this exploded. She met his eyes. This is what I meant about real change being expensive. You're going to be paying for other people's mistakes while fixing a broken culture from the ground up. Darius leaned back in his chair, processing. The smart business move would be to shut Meridian down, rebrand completely, start fresh without the baggage. Take the loss and move on. But that would mean all those people who'd suffered here suffered for nothing. It would mean Renee's behavior had consequences only for herself, not for the system that enabled her. It would mean the next owner could recreate the same toxic environment with different names. We move forward, he said. Full remediation plan, whatever it costs. Claire smiled. It was the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Good, because I already started building it. She spent the next hour walking him through her recommendations. Mandatory anti-discrimination training for all staff. New hiring protocols with diverse interview panels. Transparent promotion criteria. External audit of all disciplinary decisions from the past 2 years. Employee resource groups with direct reporting lines outside the management structure. Quarterly culture surveys with public reporting of results. It was comprehensive and expensive and exactly what was needed. When can we implement? Darius asked. Training can start next week. Structural changes will take 90 days. Full culture transformation is a 12-month process minimum. Then we start next week. That evening, Darius drove to a quiet neighborhood on the city's east side and parked outside a small ranch house with a well-maintained lawn. He sat in the car for a moment, gathering himself, then walked to the front door and rang the bell. Elena Cruz answered, surprise flickering across her face. Mr. Cole? I'm sorry to show up unannounced. Do you have a few minutes? She invited him into a modest living room where a girl of about 12 was doing homework at the dining table. The girl looked up, curious. Mija, this is Mr. Cole. He's my new boss. Elena turned to Darius. This is my daughter, Sophia. Sophia offered a shy wave, then returned to her math problems. Elena led him to the kitchen where they could talk quietly. Is everything okay? I wanted to talk to you about something Claire mentioned in her report. You told her you've been thinking about management opportunities. I did, but I didn't think, I don't have a degree or formal training. You have 2 years of experience, customer service excellence, and the respect of your coworkers. You also understand exactly what doesn't work about how this place has been run. Darius pulled out a folder. I'm offering you a position as assistant general manager. 20% pay increase, benefits, and enrollment in a hospitality management program that we'll cover. Elena stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You're... what? I need people who know how the restaurant actually operates and who are invested in making it better. You're one of those people. But I'm just a server. You're a professional who's been undervalued and overlooked. That ends now. Her eyes filled with tears. She turned away quickly, wiping at them. I'm sorry, no one's ever... Take your time. Think about it. But Elena, I'm serious. You have leadership potential that's been suppressed because Renee saw you as a threat. I see you as an asset. When he left 20 minutes later, Elena had accepted the position and Sophia had given him an enthusiastic thumbs up from the dining table. Driving home, Darius felt something loosen in his chest. This was what transformation looked like on a human scale. One person getting an opportunity they'd been denied. One family getting a little more stability. One life trajectory changing. Multiply that by 15 employees, by future hires, by customers who'd feel welcomed and valued, by other restaurants that might follow the model. Maybe it could actually work. His phone rang as he pulled into his building's garage. Michael Pryor, calling with news. Renee's attorney just withdrew the settlement demand. They're not pursuing legal action. What changed? About 40 former employees and customers started commenting on her Facebook post with their own stories. Her lawyer probably advised her that going to court would mean all of that becoming part of the public record. She's going to quietly disappear instead. Darius allowed himself a small smile. Good. Also, the Times story is running tomorrow morning. Jennifer Hartwell sent me a preview. It's fair, balanced, and makes you look like someone trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. That's all I can ask for. After hanging up, Darius stood in his parking space and looked up at the concrete ceiling, feeling the weight of the day settle into his bones. Tomorrow was CNN. Then more interviews, more planning, more decisions that would ripple outward in ways he couldn't predict. But tonight, for the first time since walking into Meridian Bistro, he felt like maybe the weight was distributed across enough shoulders that it wouldn't crush him. He rode the elevator to his floor, poured another bourbon, and stood at his windows watching the city lights pulse against the darkness. Somewhere out there, Elena was probably telling her daughter about the promotion. Marcus was maybe believing that speaking up had been worth the risk. Former employees were finding their voices in comment sections and group chats, the silence finally breaking after years of pressure. And Renee Caldwell was learning that power without accountability was only ever borrowed, never owned. Darius raised his glass to the skyline in a silent toast, then turned back to his laptop to prepare for tomorrow's interview. The story was still being written, but at least now he had a hand in how it ended. The CNN studio was smaller than Darius had imagined, all efficient lighting and carefully positioned cameras that somehow made the cramped space feel infinite on screen. He sat in the green room at 9:45, watching Kayla Brooks pace near the coffee station, her purple-streaked hair freshly styled, her nervousness manifesting in the constant adjustment of her blazer sleeves. "You've done this before, right?" she asked for the third time. "A few business interviews, nothing like this." "That's not reassuring." Darius smiled despite his own tension. "We tell the truth. That's it. No spin, no performance. Just what happened and why it mattered." A production assistant appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Cole, Miss Brooks, we're ready for you." They followed her down a narrow hallway into the studio proper. The anchor, David Chen, was already seated behind the curved desk, reviewing notes on a tablet. He looked up as they entered, his professional smile warm but assessing. "Mr. Cole, Miss Brooks, thank you for being here. We'll keep this conversational. I've got some questions prepared, but follow your instincts. If something feels important to address it." He gestured to the chairs across from him. "We're live in 2 minutes." Darius settled into his seat, the studio lights hot on his face. Beside him, Kayla had gone very still, the kind of stillness that came from channeling nerves into focus. A makeup artist darted in for final touch-ups, then disappeared. The floor director counted down from 10. David Chen's on-camera presence was effortless. "We're talking this morning about a video that's been viewed over 200,000 times in just 48 hours. A restaurant transaction that exposed what many are calling a textbook example of everyday racism in American service industries. With me are Darius Cole, the new owner of Meridian Bistro, and Kayla Brooks, the college student whose live stream captured the incident. Mr. Cole, let's start with you. Walk us through what happened." Darius had prepared for this question, but sitting under the lights with cameras rolling and however many thousands of people watching, the prepared answer felt insufficient. He went with instinct instead. "I walked into a restaurant I'd just purchased and tried to buy lunch. The floor manager threw my change in the trash, sprayed disinfectant where my money had touched, and called the police when I asked to file a complaint. It was humiliating. It was discriminatory. And it happened because she made assumptions about who I was based on how I looked." "You'd already bought the restaurant at that point?" "The sale closed that morning. I was conducting what's called an operational assessment, seeing how the business actually runs when ownership isn't announced. What I found was a culture of discrimination that had been allowed to flourish for years." David turned to Kayla. "Ms. Brooks, you started recording this interaction. What made you pull out your phone?" Kayla's voice was steadier than Darius expected. "I was just sitting there waiting for my order, and I saw this manager doing something that felt wrong. The way she was treating him was different than how she'd treated the customer before him. I've seen that kind of thing happen to my mom, to my friends. I just knew I needed to document it in case it escalated." "Did you know who Mr. Cole was when you started recording?" "No, I thought he was just a customer getting treated badly. I didn't find out he owned the place until he put his business card on the counter." David's next question came with the careful phrasing of someone navigating sensitive territory. "Mr. Cole, some people have suggested that you were looking for this kind of confrontation, that you deliberately created a situation where you could expose the manager." Darius had expected this. "I visited Meridian 3 times before I bought it. Each time I presented differently, once in a suit fresh from a business meeting, once in casual clothes on a weekend, once like I did on camera. The service I received was dramatically different each time, with the worst treatment happening when I looked least like what they expected a customer to be. So yes, I was testing the culture, But I didn't create the discrimination. I just revealed what was already there. The former manager, Renee Caldwell, has said publicly that she was following health protocols and that you've mischaracterized her actions. There's video of what happened. People can watch it and make their own judgment. What I'll say is that the health department inspected the restaurant that same day and found multiple violations, which contradicts her claim of following protocols. And the pattern of behavior documented by current and former employees contradicts her claim that this was an isolated incident. David leaned forward slightly. You've been very transparent about the problems you found. That's unusual for a business owner. Why not handle this quietly? Because quiet is how these problems persist. When discrimination happens behind closed doors and gets resolved with confidential settlements and non-disclosure agreements, nothing changes. The person who experienced it gets paid to be silent, the person who caused it moves to a new job, and the culture that enabled it continues. Darius paused, choosing his next words carefully. I have the resources and platform to handle this publicly without destroying my livelihood. Most people don't. So I'm using what I have to create a model for accountability that might help others. Kayla jumped in, her nervousness giving way to passion. That's what people don't get about the video. Yeah, it's about Mr. Cole and what happened to him. But it's also about my mom, who's been treated like that at her job and can't do anything about it because she needs the paycheck. It's about all the people who get disrespected every day in ways that are legal enough to get away with but wrong enough to hurt. David's expression showed approval. Ms. Brooks, your live stream has become a flashpoint for discussions about race, class, and service industry culture. Did you anticipate that impact? No, I just thought maybe a few dozen people would see it and think, that's messed up. I didn't expect it to go viral. But I'm glad it did, because now people are talking about stuff that usually stays invisible. The interview continued for another 12 minutes, David asking about the remediation plans, the employee responses, the industry implications. Darius laid out the culture transformation framework, the training, the external accountability, the transparent reporting systems. Kayla described the messages she'd received from service workers sharing their own stories of discrimination and mistreatment. When the cameras cut and the floor director called wrap, David Chen stood and shook both their hands. That was excellent, honest, substantive, exactly what this conversation needs. Thank you for giving us the platform, Darius said. Thank you for using it responsibly. Most people would have turned this into a revenge narrative or a self-promotion opportunity. You made it about systemic change. That matters. Outside the studio, Kayla pulled out her phone and immediately pulled up social media. Oh my God, we're trending. Number 3 nationally. Darius looked at the hashtag climbing the charts. Meridian accountability. The conversation had exploded during the broadcast, thousands of people weighing in with their own experiences, their own stories, their own demands for change in industries beyond hospitality. This is insane, Kayla breathed. People are calling their local representatives. They're organizing boycotts of restaurants with discrimination complaints. Someone started a database of service workers' rights by state. His phone buzzed with a call from Michael Pryor. He answered, already anticipating the news. The Times piece is up, front page of the business section, above the fold, and you're getting interview requests from everywhere. Morning Joe, NPR, local stations across the country. How do you want to handle it? Book NPR. Decline the rest for now. I need to actually do the work, not just talk about doing it. After the call, Darius and Kayla stood on the sidewalk outside the CNN building, the morning sun warm on their faces, the city moving around them with indifferent energy. What happens now? Kayla asked. Now I go back to the restaurant and start implementing everything I promised. What about you? I've got classes this afternoon, econ and sociology, though I'm pretty sure I'm going to be distracted thinking about this. She smiled uncertainly. Mr. Cole, can I ask you something? Darius, and yes. Do you really think you can change the whole culture? Not just at Meridian, but in general? It was the question he'd been asking himself since this started. I don't know. But I think enough people trying in enough places might create momentum. Someone has to go first. Might as well be me. That's either really brave or really arrogant. Probably both. She laughed, the sound carrying relief and residual adrenaline. Well, if you need someone to document the progress, I'm your girl. My followers are invested now. They want to see how this turns out. Then keep watching and keep filming. Accountability works both ways. I need people holding me to the promises I just made on national television. They parted ways at the corner, Kayla heading toward campus, Darius toward the parking garage where he'd left his car. His phone was vibrating constantly now, texts and calls and notifications piling up faster than he could process. He silenced it and drove to Meridian in relative peace, using the 20 minutes to center himself for what came next. The restaurant was dark when he arrived, still closed for the operational review, but Claire Morrison's car was in the lot, and through the windows he could see movement inside. He unlocked the front door and found Claire and Elena Cruz sitting at a table covered in documents, deep in conversation. Elena looked up, her expression carrying new confidence. "We watched the interview. You were great. We'll see if I still think so when the think pieces start getting written." Darius pulled up a chair. "What are you two working on?" Claire gestured at the paperwork. "New employee handbook. Elena's been invaluable in identifying what's actually enforceable versus what looks good on paper but creates resentment in practice. For example," Elena said, "the old handbook had this rigid dress code that was basically designed to make people with certain body types or cultural hairstyles uncomfortable. We're rewriting it to focus on professionalism without policing people's personal expression." "Show me." They spent the next hour reviewing the handbook revisions. Darius made notes, asked questions, pushed back on language that felt too corporate or vague. The work was granular and unglamorous, exactly the kind of detail that actually created culture change rather than just performing it. At noon, Marcus arrived with the 3 other servers who'd expressed interest in staying through the transition. They gathered around the same table where yesterday's staff meeting had happened, and Darius walked them through the immediate changes. "We reopen tomorrow. New point-of-sale system is being installed this afternoon, which means training tonight for anyone on the opening shift. Elena is your new assistant general manager, which means she's the first point of contact for scheduling, conflicts, or concerns. I'm hiring a general manager with industry experience, but that will take a few weeks." Jasmine raised her hand. "What do we tell customers who ask about what happened?" "The truth. New ownership, new policies, zero tolerance for discrimination. If someone wants details beyond that, direct them to me or Elena." "What if they're hostile? Like, what if someone comes in specifically to cause trouble because they saw the video?" It was a legitimate concern. Viral moments attracted trolls and provocateurs looking for their own 15 minutes. Anyone who's abusive to staff gets asked to leave, just like they would anywhere else. You don't have to tolerate harassment just because the restaurant is under scrutiny. Elena, I want you empowered to refuse service to anyone who's creating a hostile environment. Elena nodded, making a note. Carlos, the line cook from yesterday's meeting, spoke up from the kitchen doorway. "What about the menu? Are we changing anything?" "Eventually, yes. I want to bring in a consultant to review our sourcing and pricing, but for now, we're keeping things stable while we focus on the culture and operational issues." "Can I make a suggestion?" Carlos stepped fully into the dining room. "The menu is good, but it's also kind of generic upscale. Like, it could be any trendy restaurant in any city. What if we did something that actually reflected the neighborhood? The people who live here, not just the people who can afford $40 sandwiches." Darius studied him. "What did you have in mind?" "More accessible price points for one thing, and flavors that aren't just Italian adjacent. This neighborhood is like 30% Latino, 20% Asian, but you wouldn't know it from the food we serve." "You've thought about this." "I've worked in enough kitchens to know that the best food happens when it's personal, not performative. Right now we're performing for a customer base that's mostly white and affluent. We could do better. Write me a proposal. Specific dishes, price points, sourcing requirements. If it makes sense, we'll test it." Carlos's face lit up with surprise and something like vindication. "Seriously?" "Seriously. You know the kitchen better than I do. Use that expertise." After the meeting dispersed, Claire pulled Darius aside. "You're building a lot of goodwill very quickly. That's good. But you need to be prepared for the backlash." "What backlash?" "The kind that comes when you disrupt comfortable hierarchies. You're promoting people who were kept down. You're calling out discrimination that was previously ignored. You're changing power dynamics. The people who benefited from the old system won't go quietly." "Renee's already gone." "I'm not talking about Renee. I'm talking about suppliers who charged premium prices because no one questioned them. Customers who liked being able to treat staff poorly without consequences. Other restaurant owners who see your changes as implicit criticism of their own practices. Claire's expression was serious. You're creating a standard that will make some people uncomfortable. Expect resistance. Let them resist. The standard is basic human dignity. That's not negotiable. I know. I just want you to be ready when the pushback comes in forms you don't anticipate. She left shortly after, heading to interview the former employees who'd agreed to participate. Darius spent the afternoon with the point-of-sale vendor, learning the new system and making sure the interface was intuitive enough that staff wouldn't struggle during the transition. At 4:30, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize, but a 202 area code that suggested Washington, D.C. Mr. Cole, this is Congresswoman Patricia Martinez. I represent the district where Meridian Bistro is located. Do you have a moment? Darius sat up straighter, despite being alone. Of course, Congresswoman. I watched your CNN interview this morning. I've also been following the story since the video went viral. What you're doing is exactly the kind of accountability we need to see in private industry, and I wanted to offer my office's support in any way that would be helpful. That's generous. What did you have in mind? I'm introducing legislation that would strengthen protections against discrimination in public accommodations. Your case is a perfect example of why those protections matter. I'd like to cite your experience in remediation efforts as a model for what businesses should be doing proactively. I'm happy to support that however I can. Excellent. I'll have my staff reach out to coordinate details. But, Mr. Cole, I also want to be straight with you. You're going to face scrutiny now from people who see this as government overreach or political correctness. My endorsement will help with some constituencies and hurt with others. I appreciate the honesty. But if the people who are upset because I'm treating employees and customers with basic respect, I'm comfortable with that. Good, because that's exactly the kind of clarity we need more of. She paused. I'm also going to make sure the Department of Labor knows to investigate any retaliation claims that come out of this. You've stuck your neck out. I want to make sure it doesn't get chopped off. After the call, Darius sat in the quiet restaurant and thought about how quickly this had escalated beyond his control. A congresswoman was citing his case for legislation. National media was using it as a referendum on service industry culture. Thousands of people he'd never met had opinions about his choices, his motives, his character. The weight of it was surreal. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Very proud of you, baby, but please be careful. The higher the profile, the bigger the target. He sent back a heart emoji and a promise to call her that evening. The training session for the new POS system ran from 6 to 8:30, the opening shift staff working through mock transactions until the workflow felt natural. Darius ordered pizza for everyone, and they ate around the same tables where 2 days ago Renee had performed her cruelty. Marcus was navigating the system with increasing confidence. This is actually way better than the old setup. We can customize orders more easily, and it automatically flags allergens. It also tracks service patterns, Darius said. If we see certain servers consistently getting flagged for slower service or errors, we can provide targeted training instead of just writing people up. Wait, so this helps us instead of just monitoring us? That's the idea. Technology should make your job easier, not create more ways to punish you. Jasmine looked up from her practice screen. That's such a different vibe from before. Renee used to treat every mistake like a personal attack, like we were screwing up on purpose just to make her look bad. That's because she saw you as problems to be managed instead of people to be supported, Elena said quietly. That changes now. The staff left around 9, tired but noticeably more relaxed than they'd been 2 days ago. Darius stayed to finalize the morning's prep list with Carlos, who'd taken the initiative to start outlining his menu proposal. I'm thinking we do a rotating special that highlights different cuisines, Carlos explained, pulling up notes on his phone. Keep the core menu stable for people who want the familiar stuff, but offer something new every week. This week may be Korean-Mexican fusion. I do a short rib taco that's incredible. Next week, something Moroccan-inspired. Build interest and diversity without overwhelming the kitchen. How much would that add to food costs? If we source smart, maybe 5%. But I think we'd see increased traffic from people who want something interesting. and it positions us as innovative instead of just another upscale white tablecloth place. Write it up formally. Include sourcing options and projected costs. If the numbers work, we'll test it next month. Carlos left with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just been taken seriously for the first time in his career. Darius locked up behind him and stood alone in the restaurant, looking at the space with fresh eyes. In 3 days, it had gone from a crime scene of casual cruelty to a laboratory for culture change. The marble still gleamed, the brass still shone, but the energy had shifted. People were invested now. They believed something different was possible. He couldn't afford to let them down. The drive home was meditative, the city's late-night rhythms providing a soundtrack of distant sirens and traffic hum. His phone had finally stopped its constant vibration, the news cycle moving on to fresh outrages and viral moments. But when he pulled up his email, he found his inbox flooded with messages from people he'd never met, service workers sharing their stories, restaurant owners asking for advice on implementing similar changes, lawyers offering pro bono support for discrimination cases, students writing papers about the incident and requesting interviews. One email stood out, from an address he recognized, Jerome Williams, the server who'd quit 6 months ago rather than endure more of Renee's harassment. Mr. Cole, it read, I saw what you did. I saw you stand there and take it when you could have just walked away. I saw you fire her when you could have just moved her somewhere else. I saw you actually change things instead of just talking about changing things. I want you to know that matters. I spent 6 months thinking I was the problem, that I wasn't tough enough or professional enough to handle her. Seeing her face consequences makes me realize it was never about me. So thank you. For yourself, yeah, but also for everyone else she hurt who didn't have the power to fight back. You gave us our dignity back by standing up for yours. Darius read it 3 times, feeling something tighten in his chest. This was why it mattered. Not the CNN interview or the congressional attention or the viral video, but this. One person who'd been made to feel small, finally understanding that the smallness was never theirs to carry. He typed a response. Jerome, thank you for this message and for your willingness to give a formal statement to the investigator. What happened to you was wrong, and I'm sorry you had to experience it. If you're interested in returning to Meridian under the new management, I'd welcome the conversation. No pressure, just an open door if you want it. The response came within minutes. I'd like that. Let's talk. Darius smiled and closed his laptop. Tomorrow Meridian would reopen to the public for the first time under new ownership and new policies. The staff was trained, the systems were updated, the culture framework was being implemented, but the real test would be whether they could sustain it, whether the changes would hold under pressure, whether the commitment to dignity and equity would survive the grinding daily reality of running a business. His phone rang one last time. Michael Pryor, calling with news that made Darius's stomach drop. We've got a problem. The health inspector who cited the violations? She's being investigated by her own department for bias. Someone filed a complaint claiming she went too hard on Meridian because of the racial element, that she wouldn't have been as strict with a different establishment. That's absurd. She found legitimate violations. I know, but the optics are bad. If her citations get dismissed as biased, it undermines part of your justification for firing Renee. The video still exists, the witness statements still exist, her own resignation letter still exists. True. But you watch. Someone's going to spin this as proof that you and the inspector colluded to target Renee, that this whole thing was orchestrated. Darius closed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. What do we do? We cooperate fully with any investigation, we provide all documentation, and we trust that the truth holds up under scrutiny. Also, I'm going to reach out to the health department's legal team and make sure they understand we support their inspector completely. After hanging up, Darius stood at his windows and watched the city lights blur as his vision unfocused with fatigue. Claire had been right. The pushback was coming in forms he hadn't anticipated, not just from Renee or her supporters, but from systems that didn't want to be implicated in enabling discrimination. The health department investigation was strategic. If the violations got dismissed, if the inspector got disciplined, it would create doubt about the entire narrative. It would give Renee's defenders ammunition. It would make accountability look like vendetta. He pulled out his phone and sent a message to Jennifer Hartwell, the Times reporter. If I wanted to go on record supporting the health inspector who cited Meridian, Would you be interested in that story? Her response came within 2 minutes. Absolutely. Let's talk tomorrow. Because that was the other side of exposure. He had a platform now. Might as well use it to protect the people who'd helped reveal the truth. Darius poured himself a final bourbon and sat in the dark, thinking about Jerome's email and the inspector's investigation and the staff who'd be walking into work tomorrow morning with new hope and old anxieties. The work was just beginning. The real transformation wouldn't happen in viral moments or televised interviews. It would happen in 1,000 small decisions, daily choices about who to believe and who to support, and what standards to maintain when maintaining them was expensive and inconvenient. He finished his drink and went to bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges he couldn't predict. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing work that actually mattered beyond profit margins and acquisition strategies. And that, more than anything, made the weight worth carrying. Darius woke at 5:30 to the sound of rain against his windows, the city wrapped in gray October clouds that matched his mood. Today, Meridian would reopen, and with it came the weight of every promise he'd made, to the staff, to the public, to himself. He went through his morning routine on autopilot, his mind already at the restaurant, anticipating problems he couldn't yet name. By 6:45, he was unlocking the back door, the smell of fresh paint still lingering from yesterday's minor repairs. Elena was already there, sitting at a table with 3 cups of coffee and a legal pad covered in notes. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the same nervous energy he felt reflected in her expression. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Sophia woke me up at 5 asking if today was the day I became a boss." Elena smiled despite her tension. "I told her I've been a boss, just nobody noticed until now. Smart kid. She gets it from her father. He was good at seeing what people could be instead of just what they were." Her voice caught slightly. "He died when she was 4. Car accident. Some days I still can't believe I'm doing this without him." Darius pulled out a chair. "He'd be proud of you." "I hope so. I also hope I don't screw this up spectacularly on day 1. You won't. And if something goes wrong, we fix it together. That's what teams do." The staff began arriving at 7. Marcus with his careful efficiency, Jasmine with her nervous chatter, Carlos with a container of something that smelled incredible. The new hires Darius had brought on, 2 servers with impeccable references and explicit commitments to the new culture, arrived exactly on time and wide-eyed with first-day anxiety. At 7:30, they gathered for a final briefing before opening. Darius kept it short. "Today is going to be interesting. Some people will come because they're curious about the video. Some will come to support what we're doing. Some will come looking for problems. Your job is the same regardless. Provide excellent service to everyone who walks through that door. Treat every customer with the same respect and professionalism. If anyone gives you trouble, get Elena or me immediately." "What if someone films us?" one of the new servers asked. Her name was Michelle, 26, previously at a restaurant that had closed after its own discrimination scandal. "Let them film. We've got nothing to hide. Just do your job the way we trained you to do it." At 8 a.m., Darius unlocked the front door and flipped the sign to open. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. The rain continued its steady percussion. The street outside remained empty except for early commuters hunched under umbrellas. Then the door chimed. An elderly black woman entered, shaking rain from her coat. She looked around the restaurant with sharp, assessing eyes, then walked directly to Darius. "You the owner?" "Yes, ma'am." "I saw what happened here. Saw that woman throw your money away like you were garbage." Her voice was quiet but fierce. "I came to spend mine properly. To show that some of us remember when being refused service meant something different, something worse. What you did matters. Don't let anybody tell you different." She ordered breakfast and sat by the window with a newspaper, and Darius felt something settle in his chest. Whatever happened next, at least one person understood. The morning built slowly. A few curious onlookers. A handful of regulars who'd clearly heard about the changes and wanted to see for themselves. By 9:30, the dining room was at quarter capacity, modest but respectable for a rainy Wednesday. Then Kayla Brooks walked in with her phone out, already streaming. "Hey everyone, I'm back at Meridian Bistro for their reopening under new ownership. Let's see how things have changed." She panned the camera across the dining room, capturing the diverse mix of customers, the relaxed staff, the new signage by the register that read, "All guests welcome, discrimination not tolerated." Her stream pulled in viewers fast. Within 10 minutes, the comment section was flooding with questions and encouragement. Within 20 minutes, people started showing up specifically because they'd seen the stream. By 10:30, there was a wait for tables. Elena managed the floor with growing confidence, seating people efficiently, handling the inevitable small crises: a wrong order, a spilled drink, a customer who wanted modifications the kitchen couldn't accommodate. Darius watched her transform in real time, from nervous first-day manager to someone who understood her own authority. At 11, 3 police officers walked through the door. The dining room went quiet. Darius felt his pulse spike, old instincts kicking in despite knowing he'd done nothing wrong. Elena caught his eye from across the room, her expression suddenly guarded. The lead officer, a woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes, approached the host stand where Michelle stood frozen. "We're here to speak with the owner." Darius walked over, keeping his hands visible, his voice steady. "I'm Darius Cole. How can I help you?" The sergeant's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Cole, I'm Sergeant Martinez. I was one of the responding officers the day of the incident with your former manager. I wanted to come by personally to see how things were going." The tension in his shoulders eased fractionally. "That's kind of you. Would you and your colleagues like to sit down? Breakfast is on the house." "We can't accept free meals on duty, but we appreciate the offer. I just wanted you to know that what happened here, the way you handled it, has been discussed extensively in our department. We get called to situations like this more often than we'd like, and usually they end badly. Seeing someone use the system the way it's supposed to work, holding people accountable without violence or escalation, that matters to us." "Thank you, Sergeant. That means a lot." Also, off the record, the health inspector who cited the violations is solid. She's facing an internal investigation that's pure politics, trying to discredit her findings to protect the department from criticism. Don't let that narrative take hold. "I'm already working on that." Martinez nodded. "Good. This city needs more people willing to do the right thing even when it costs them." She glanced around the dining room. "Place looks good. Feels different than it did before." After the officers left, Kayla ended her stream with a flourish. And there you have it, folks. Meridian is officially back and doing things right. Come support if you can. The comment section exploded with pledges to visit, to spread the word, to hold other restaurants to the same standard. The viral moment was becoming something more sustained. A movement, maybe, or at least the beginning of one. At noon, Richard Ashford walked in with Priya Sharma and another man Darius didn't recognize. Ashford's expression was unreadable as he approached. "Mr. Cole, this is David Brennan. He owns the Hospitality Workers Union local chapter. We thought it was time for a conversation." Darius shook Brennan's hand, reading the calculation in the other man's eyes. Union leadership showing up unannounced was either very good or very bad. "Should we talk privately?" Darius asked. "That would be wise." They moved to the office, the 4 of them cramped in the small space. Brennan settled into a chair with the comfort of someone used to difficult negotiations. "Mr. Cole, you've created an interesting situation. You've publicly committed to worker protections and fair treatment. You've raised wages and promoted from within. You've implemented external accountability systems, all of which are things the union has been pushing for in this industry for decades. I'm sensing a but coming. But you did it unilaterally, without consulting with organized labor, which creates a precedent that individual owners can solve these problems through benevolent management rather than through collective bargaining and structural change." Brennan leaned forward. "Don't get me wrong. What you're doing is good, but it's also fragile. It depends on you being a good owner. What happens when you sell, when profit margins tighten, when the viral moment fades and accountability gets expensive?" Darius considered this. "What are you proposing?" "Let us organize your workers. Not because you're a bad employer, but because collective bargaining creates protections that survive individual leadership. You can be the model for what union partnership looks like in upscale hospitality. Fair wages, transparent policies, worker representation, all of it codified in contracts that outlast your ownership." Ashford spoke up. I should mention that several other restaurants in the Alliance are considering similar moves. If Meridian becomes a union shop successfully, it could shift the entire district's labor dynamics. And if it fails? Darius asked. Then the anti-union forces use it as evidence that worker empowerment kills businesses, Brennan said bluntly. So we'd need to do this right. Full transparency, collaborative negotiation, mutual commitment to making it work. Priya added, I've reviewed the union's proposals for other properties. They're reasonable and aligned with the culture changes you're already implementing. This could actually strengthen your position rather than complicate it. Darius looked at each of them in turn, the Industry Alliance representative, the union leader, the consultant who'd helped him start this process. They were offering him a path to make the changes permanent, to build something that would survive his eventual exit. I need to talk to my staff first, get their input. This affects them more than it affects me. Fair enough, Brennan said. Take your time. But Mr. Cole, understand that you've opened a door here. Other people are going to walk through it one way or another. Better to shape that process than watch it happen around you. After they left, Darius sat alone in the office and thought about his father's construction company, which had stayed non-union despite pressure from both sides. Thomas Cole had believed in treating workers fairly without third-party intervention, had paid well and built loyalty through direct relationships. But he'd also died exhausted, carrying every worker's well-being personally, unable to delegate the responsibility of care. Maybe Brennan was right. Maybe individual benevolence wasn't sustainable. Maybe structural protection was the only thing that lasted. He pulled out his phone and called Michael Pryor. The union wants to organize Meridian. Thoughts? Michael was quiet for a moment. Complicated. Could add labor costs, create negotiation overhead, but it would also demonstrate that your commitment to worker protection goes beyond PR. And given the scrutiny you're under, having union backing might provide political cover. So you're saying do it? I'm saying it's a strategic choice that depends on whether you're optimizing for short-term profit or long-term credibility. Which matters more to you? Darius looked through the office window at the dining room, where Elena was handling a difficult customer with grace, where Marcus was training a new hire with patience, where Carlos's fusion special was selling faster than the regular menu items. Credibility. Always credibility. Then talk to your staff and see where they land. If they want union representation, support it. If they don't, respect that too. The key is that it's their choice, not yours imposed on them. The lunch rush intensified through the afternoon. By 1 p.m., they had a 30-minute wait and every table full. The kitchen was moving at controlled chaos, Carlos calling orders with the precision of someone who understood exactly what his team could handle. The servers worked in synchronized rhythm, no wasted motion, supporting each other through the surge. And through it all, Darius watched for signs of the old culture, differential treatment, microaggressions, the casual cruelty that had thrived under Renee's management. He saw none of it. What he saw instead was professionalism, mutual respect, and the kind of service that came from people who felt valued in their work. At 2:30, the health inspector returned. She walked in without announcement, clipboard in hand, her expression professionally neutral. Darius met her at the door. Inspector, welcome back. Mr. Cole, I'm here for a surprise follow-up on the violations cited during my previous inspection. I understand you've made changes, but I need to verify compliance. Of course. Carlos, can you come out here, please? The line cook emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. Inspector Chen, good to see you again. She smiled slightly. Mr. Herrera, are you ready for me? Kitchen's ready whenever you are. They disappeared into the back, and Darius felt the weight of knowing that this inspection carried implications beyond health code compliance. If she found continuing violations, it would undermine his claims of rapid improvement. If she cleared them completely, it would validate everything he'd said about Renee's mismanagement. 20 minutes later, Inspector Chen emerged with Carlos, both looking satisfied. Mr. Cole, I'm pleased to report that all previously cited violations have been corrected. Temperature logs are complete and accurate. Storage protocols meet standards. Employee health certifications are current and properly filed. She made notes on her clipboard. I'm issuing a full clearance with commendation for rapid remediation. You'll still be subject to quarterly surprise inspections per my recommendation, but as of today, you're in full compliance. Relief washed through him. Thank you, Inspector. Thank your staff, but Mr. Herrera walked me through every change you've implemented. The difference is remarkable. She lowered her voice. I want you to know that the investigation into my conduct is politically motivated. There are people who don't want to acknowledge that I found legitimate problems here because it implicates them in enabling those problems. But my findings were accurate, my methodology was sound, and I stand by every citation. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that. I've got an interview with the Times tomorrow specifically to address the investigation and support your work. Her expression softened. That's not necessary. It absolutely is. You did your job correctly when it would have been easier to look the other way. I'm not letting you take heat for that alone. After she left, Darius gathered the staff for a quick meeting during the mid-afternoon lull. 2 things. First, we passed the health inspection with full clearance. That's because of the work you all put in over the past 3 days, and I want you to know it's noticed and appreciated. Applause rippled through the group, tired but genuine. Second, I had a conversation this morning with union leadership. They've expressed interest in organizing Meridian's workers. I want to be clear, this is your decision, not mine. If you want union representation, I'll support it. If you don't, I'll respect that. But I think you deserve to hear what they're proposing before you decide. Elena spoke up first. Would we get to vote on it? Absolutely, that's how it works. They make their case, you vote by secret ballot, democracy decides. Jasmine looked uncertain. I've heard unions can be as bad management, just a different kind of problem. That's a fair concern, Darius said, which is why you should ask hard questions, get clear answers, and make an informed choice. I'm not trying to push you either direction. I just want you to have options. Carlos nodded slowly. I've worked union shops before. It's not perfect, but it meant I couldn't get fired for BS reasons. Had clear procedures for everything. I'd at least want to hear what they're offering. Then we'll set up a meeting. Everyone who wants to attend can. Everyone who doesn't have to. Fair? Agreement murmured through the group. As they dispersed back to their stations, Elena pulled Darius aside. Can I ask you something honestly? Always. Why are you doing this? The union thing, I mean. Most owners fight unionization like it's the plague. You're basically inviting it in. Because I won't own this restaurant forever. Eventually I'll sell or move on or something will happen. And when that day comes, I want to know that the protections you all have don't disappear with me. Union contracts survive ownership changes. My good intentions don't. She studied his face for a long moment. You really mean that? I really do. Then I'm in. Whatever they're proposing, I want to hear it. Because you're right, we can't count on every owner being like you. The afternoon shifted into early evening. The dinner crowd started trickling in, different energy than lunch, more couples and small groups looking for the experience rather than just the food. Kayla returned with 2 friends, setting up at a corner table with her phone ready to capture the dinner service. At 6:15, a man in an expensive suit walked in and asked for Darius by name. There was something in his bearing, entitled, aggressive, that set off alarm bells. I'm Darius Cole. Robert Davidson, Davidson Group. We sold you this restaurant. The previous owner, showing up unannounced. This couldn't be good. Mr. Davidson, what can I do for you? You can stop slandering my company in the press. This narrative you're pushing, that we enabled discrimination, that we ignored problems, it's damaging my reputation and my other properties. Darius kept his voice level. I haven't mentioned your company by name in any interview. You've implied it. All this talk about previous management and culture that was allowed to flourish. People aren't stupid. They know we owned it before you. Then maybe you should have addressed the problems when you actually owned it. Davidson's face flushed. We had no knowledge of any discrimination. You had employee complaints in your files. You had turnover rates 30% above industry standard. You had a manager who was reported multiple times for abusive behavior. You chose not to act. That's a lie. It's documented. I've got the files. Your HR department logged complaints and did nothing. So if you're worried about your reputation, maybe look at your own choices instead of blaming me for revealing them. Davidson stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. You think you're some kind of hero here? You're an opportunist who bought a distressed property and turned a personnel issue into a publicity stunt. 6 months from now, when the cameras are gone and the work gets hard, you'll cut corners just like everyone else. The only difference is you'll feel righteous while doing it. I guess we'll find out. Yeah, we will. And when you fail, when this place tanks because you're spending more time on social justice theater than actual business operations, don't come crying about how hard the restaurant industry is. You made your choice. Live with it. He turned and walked out, the door chiming with finality behind him. Elena appeared at Darius's elbow. Who was that charming individual? The reason this place needed to be bought by someone who actually gave a damn. She smiled grimly. Good. Because I'd hate to think we went through all this just to end up back where we started. The dinner service continued smoothly despite the confrontation. By 8 p.m., the dining room was at capacity, the kitchen humming, the staff working with the confidence of people who knew what they were doing. Darius moved through the space, checking in with tables, addressing minor issues, watching the transformation he'd set in motion take root. At 8:30, his phone buzzed with a call from Jennifer Hartwell. Mr. Cole, I wanted to give you a heads up. We're running a follow-up piece tomorrow about the health inspector investigation. I've got sources confirming that the complaint against her was filed by someone connected to the Davidson Group, likely in retaliation for the citations. Can you prove that? Documentation shows the complainant is a consultant who's done work for Davidson Properties. The timing, filed 2 days after your CNN interview, suggests coordination. It's not definitive, but it's suggestive enough to report with appropriate caveats. Will you mention Davidson by name? I have to. It's material to the story. The previous owners appear to be trying to discredit the inspector to protect themselves from implications of negligence. Darius thought about Davidson's visit. The barely contained rage, the threats veiled as predictions. The man was fighting back the only way he knew how, through pressure and intimidation. It wasn't going to work. Run the story. I'll stand by every word of my interview. I thought you'd say that. One more thing. I've been contacted by 3 other restaurant workers in different establishments with similar stories about discrimination and hostile management. They're citing what happened at Meridian as inspiration to come forward. This might be bigger than one restaurant. Good, it should be. After the call, Darius stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Carlos plate his fusion special, Korean short-rib tacos with kimchi slaw and gochujang aioli, the kind of food that told a story about who actually lived in this neighborhood. Customers were ordering it at 3-to-1 over the traditional menu items. Carlos, these numbers are incredible. How fast can you develop 3 more fusion options? The line cook's face lit up. 2 weeks if you give me budget for testing. I've got ideas for Thai Southern, Filipino Italian, and Ethiopian French combinations. Do it. And Carlos, I want you to start training as sous chef. You've got the skills and the vision. Time to make it official. For a moment, Carlos just stared at him. Then he nodded, too moved to speak, and turned back to his station with renewed purpose. Elena caught the exchange and smiled. You're building something real here. We're building something real here, Darius corrected. I'm just the guy who bought the building and got rid of the person poisoning it. You all are doing the actual work. At 9:30, the last customers filtered out. The staff began closing procedures, wiping down tables, counting registers, prepping for tomorrow. Darius called everyone together one final time. First day under new management is done. You all performed beautifully. I know some of you were nervous about how today would go, whether the changes were real or just talk. I hope you saw that we're serious, that the commitments we made are commitments we're keeping. Marcus raised his hand. Mr. Cole, I just want to say, this was the first shift I've worked where I didn't feel anxious the whole time, where I knew that if something went wrong, I wouldn't get blamed or written up or made to feel stupid. That matters more than I know how to say. Others nodded, murmured agreement. It matters to me too, Darius said, which is why we're going to keep building on it. Tomorrow, the union representatives are coming in at 2 p.m. to talk about organizing. Anyone who wants to sit in on that conversation is welcome. Anyone who doesn't, no pressure. But I want you to have all the information before you make a decision about your future here. The staff dispersed slowly, tired but noticeably lighter than they'd been 3 days ago. Darius locked up behind the last person to leave, then stood alone in the empty restaurant one more time. His phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. Stream tonight got 15K live viewers. People are invested in Meridian's success. Don't screw it up. He sent back a laughing emoji and a promise to keep her updated. The drive home was quiet, his mind cataloging everything that had gone right and everything that still needed work. The union question was complicated but necessary. The menu evolution would take time but already showed promise. The health department clearance removed one vector of attack, but Davidson's retaliation attempt suggested there would be others. But for the first time since this started, Darius felt like the foundation was solid. The culture was changing because the people were changing it, not because he was forcing it. The staff believed in what they were building because they were active participants, not passive recipients of his benevolence. 3 weeks later, Meridian Bistro looked like a different restaurant entirely, despite occupying the same physical space. The marble still gleamed, the brass still caught the light, but the energy was unrecognizable from the place where Renee had thrown his change away. The union vote had passed 73% in favor, making Meridian the first upscale restaurant in the district to voluntarily recognize organized labor. The contract negotiations had been surprisingly smooth, mostly because Darius was already implementing most of what the union demanded: fair wages, clear promotion criteria, protected reporting channels, sustainable scheduling. Carlos had officially become sous chef, and his fusion menu was outselling the traditional options by significant margins. Food critics who'd initially come to observe the controversy stayed to write about the innovative cuisine, giving Meridian its first positive press coverage in years. Elena had hired 2 additional managers, both women of color with hospitality experience and explicit commitments to inclusive culture. She was also enrolled in a management certification program that would finish in 6 months, positioning her for general manager when Darius found the right external candidate for that role. Jerome Williams had returned as a server and was thriving under the new environment, his natural charisma and customer service skills finally recognized and rewarded instead of suppressed. The health inspector's investigation had been quietly dropped after the Times piece revealed Davidson's connection to the complaint. Inspector Chen had received a formal commendation from the city, and her inspections of other restaurants had led to significant improvements in health compliance across the district. Renee Caldwell had disappeared from social media and, according to industry whispers, had left the hospitality field entirely. Her Facebook post had been deleted, her threatened lawsuit never materialized, and her name was becoming a cautionary tale about what happened when casual cruelty met actual consequences. And the video, now at nearly 500,000 views, had spawned a movement. The hashtag #ServiceWithDignity was being used by workers across industries to share their own stories and demand better treatment. Restaurants in 6 cities had implemented Meridian-style accountability policies. 2 state legislatures were considering enhanced protections for service workers. Darius sat in his usual table by the window on a Thursday afternoon, reviewing quarterly projections with his CFO. The numbers told a story he'd barely dared hope for. Revenue up 18%, customer satisfaction scores in the 90th percentile, employee retention at 100%, profit margins healthy despite the increased labor costs. "I have to admit," the CFO said, "I thought the union contract would tank the financials. I was wrong. Turns out people work harder and better when they're treated well. Revolutionary concept." "Apparently. You planning to replicate this model at other properties?" Darius looked around the dining room, where a diverse mix of customers enjoyed Carlos's latest creation: Filipino-Italian lumpia filled with Sunday gravy braised short rib, served with a garlic aioli that had people closing their eyes in pleasure. Where Elena managed the floor with quiet authority, her daughter's soccer schedule displayed proudly on her phone. Where Marcus trained new hires with the patience of someone who remembered what it felt like to be powerless and scared. "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." 6 months after that, Darius stood in Meridian's private dining room with a crowd of people who'd become far more than employees or business associates. They were celebrating the restaurant's official certification as a fair trade service establishment, a designation that required external verification of equitable practices, transparent operations, and worker empowerment. Kayla Brooks was there, now an intern at a documentary production company working on a longer piece about service industry transformation. Her original live stream had been licensed by 3 different media companies, the revenue from which she'd used to establish a scholarship fund for hospitality workers pursuing higher education. Inspector Chen attended, off-duty and relaxed, talking shop with Elena about kitchen safety innovations. Sergeant Martinez had stopped by earlier with congratulations from the police department's community liaison office. Richard Ashford and Priya Sharma represented the Hospitality Alliance, which had officially adopted Meridian's model as the template for their industry-wide culture initiative. David Brennan from the union was deep in conversation with Carlos about expanding to other properties. Jerome Williams was laughing with Marcus about something, both of them wearing the easy confidence of people who knew they were valued. And in the corner, Claire Morrison was taking notes for her case study on organizational culture transformation, which would be published in the Harvard Business Review and used in MBA programs as an example of how to align profit with principles. Darius's mother was there too, having flown in for the occasion, her pride evident in every glance she gave him. She'd pulled him aside earlier and whispered, "Your father would be so proud, not because you bought a restaurant, but because you used your power to lift people up instead of holding them down. That's the legacy that matters." Elena clinked a glass for attention, and the room quieted. "I'm going to keep this short because there's food getting cold, and Carlos will kill me if his duck confit empanadas aren't eaten at proper temperature." Laughter rippled through the crowd. 6 months ago, I was a server who'd been told in 1,000 subtle ways that I'd peaked, that management wasn't for people like me, that I should be grateful for what I had, and stop reaching for more. Today, I'm the general manager of a certified fair trade establishment. I'm finishing my hospitality degree, and my daughter knows that working hard and standing up for what's right actually matters. Her voice caught slightly. That transformation didn't happen because someone gave me a participation trophy or lowered standards. It happened because someone saw my potential, gave me opportunity, and created an environment where excellence was possible for everyone, not just the people who already had advantages. She looked at Darius. "So thank you for buying this place, for enduring what you endured to expose what was broken, and for having the courage to fix it even when it was expensive and complicated and way easier to just rebrand and move on." The room erupted in applause. Darius stood, uncomfortable with the attention but understanding it was necessary. "I appreciate that, Elena, but I want to be really clear about something. What happened here wasn't about me being a hero or having special virtue. It was about basic human dignity being treated as revolutionary because we've normalized discrimination for so long that calling it out feels radical." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I walked into this restaurant and got my change thrown in the trash because someone looked at me and decided I didn't belong. That hurt. It was humiliating and infuriating and wrong. But the worst part wasn't what happened to me. It was realizing that it had been happening to other people for years, people who didn't have the resources or platform or power to fight back." He looked around the room at the faces watching him. "So yeah, I bought the restaurant and fired the manager and implemented new policies. But you all are the ones who did the hard work of culture change. You showed up every day and chose to do better. You held each other accountable. You believed things could be different and made them different through your actions." He raised his glass. "This certification isn't mine. It's ours. And more importantly, it's proof that transformation is possible when people commit to it collectively, structurally, and permanently." As the celebration continued, Darius slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The evening air was cool, autumn giving way to winter, the city settling into its nighttime rhythms. He stood on the sidewalk where, 3 days before the incident, he'd stood contemplating whether this acquisition was worth the risk. The answer was yes. Not because of the profit margins or the positive press or even the culture certification, but because 15 people had jobs where they felt valued, because customers experienced genuine hospitality regardless of how they looked or spoke, because one restaurant proved that accountability was possible, that change could happen, that power wielded with conscience was still power but directed toward construction rather than destruction. His phone buzzed with a message from Michael Pryor. "News just broke. Davidson Group is being investigated by the State Labor Board for pattern of discrimination across all their properties. Former employees are coming forward. Your case gave them courage. Darius stared at the message, feeling the weight of ripples he hadn't intended but couldn't regret. Davidson's visit 6 months ago, threatening and dismissive, had planted seeds that were now bearing fruit. Justice moves slowly, but sometimes it moved. He typed back, "Will they need documentation from our investigation?" "Already requested it. Also, 3 other restaurant groups are implementing your model. You're becoming a case study in how to do this right." The door opened behind him. Elena stepped out, wrapping her cardigan tighter against the chill. "You okay out here?" "Yeah, just needed a minute." "It's a lot, isn't it? Going from regular person to symbol of something bigger." "I never wanted to be a symbol." "Nobody does. But you are, whether you like it or not. The question is what you do with it." Darius looked at her, seeing the young server who'd been afraid to speak up, transformed into the general manager who now mentored others through their own transformations. "What do you think I should do with it?" Elena smiled. "Keep doing what you've been doing. Buy more restaurants, fix more cultures. Prove that this wasn't a fluke or a publicity stunt. Show the industry that profit and principles aren't mutually exclusive." She paused. "And maybe hire me as your director of operations when you're ready to expand. Sophia wants to go to college in Boston, and that's expensive. You want to leave Meridian?" "Not leave. Elevate. I want to help you build this model across multiple properties. I want other people to have the opportunity I had. And honestly, I'm good at this. Really good. It would be a waste to keep me at one location when I could be helping transform a whole portfolio." Darius extended his hand. "Director of Operations for Cole Hospitality Acquisitions. 20% raise, full benefits, and budget for culture transformation at each new property." She shook it firmly. "I accept." Sophia's going to lose her mind. They stood together in the cool evening, watching the city move around them, and Darius thought about the fact that $47.83 had bought him so much more than a restaurant. It had bought him purpose, proof of concept, and a team of people committed to building something that mattered. The marble counter where his change had been thrown away was now the centerpiece of a restaurant that proved dignity wasn't negotiable. The trash bin that had held his money now held only actual trash. Nothing symbolic, nothing cruel. And the space that had been poisoned by casual discrimination was now a laboratory for what inclusive excellence looked like in practice. 2 years later, Cole Hospitality Acquisitions owned 8 properties across 4 cities, each one transformed using the Meridian model: comprehensive cultural audits, external accountability, union partnerships, inclusive hiring, and zero tolerance for discrimination. The portfolio was profitable, critically acclaimed, and certified fair trade across all locations. Darius stood in the original Meridian Bistro on the anniversary of his viral moment, watching Kayla Brooks's completed documentary premiere on the restaurant's projection screen. The film traced the journey from that November afternoon when money hit trash to this moment of proven, sustainable transformation. Elena was there with Sophia, now a high school senior with college acceptance letters from her top 3 choices. Carlos had opened his own fusion concept with Darius's backing, a restaurant that celebrated the neighborhood's actual diversity rather than performing upscale homogeneity. Marcus was managing one of the newer properties, implementing the systems he'd helped develop at Meridian. Jerome had been promoted to training director, traveling between locations to ensure every new hire understood the culture they were joining. And in the corner, his mother sat with Inspector Chen, both of them laughing about something, both of them witnesses to what happened when accountability met action. The documentary ended with footage from that original live stream, Renee throwing the change, Darius standing perfectly still, the room holding its collective breath. Then it cut to present day. The same counter, different staff, diverse customers being served with genuine respect and warmth. Kayla's voiceover played over the final images. The question was never whether one person could make a difference. The question was whether making a difference once was enough, or whether the real work was making it sustainable, systemic, permanent. Darius Cole chose the harder path, and in doing so, he proved that transformation isn't about viral moments. It's about the unglamorous, expensive, complicated work of building cultures where dignity is the baseline, not the exception. The screen faded to black, and the room erupted in applause. Darius stood to say a few words, but his mother caught his eye and shook her head gently. This moment didn't need his voice. It needed to speak for itself. So he sat back down and let the work stand as its own testimony, knowing that somewhere in another city, another person was walking into another establishment and being treated like they didn't belong. And maybe, just maybe, they'd remember that accountability was possible, that change could happen, that $47.83 could buy an entire revolution if spent correctly. The celebration continued late into the evening, stories being shared and futures being planned, and through it all Darius carried the quiet certainty that this was what his father's legacy had been building toward. Not just success measured in dollars, but transformation measured in dignity restored, in people empowered, in cultures rebuilt from foundations of respect rather than hierarchies of contempt. He'd walked into Meridian Bistro as a customer and left as its owner. But more importantly, he'd walked into a broken system and refused to accept that brokenness was inevitable. And in that refusal, in that insistence on something better, he discovered that the most revolutionary act available to someone with power was using it to dismantle the structures that made power necessary for basic human dignity. The marble still gleamed, the brass still shone. But the story the space told was entirely different now. Not a cautionary tale of discrimination unchecked, but a proof of concept for what happened when someone chose accountability over convenience, transformation over profit, and collective dignity over individual comfort. And that story, more than any business metric or media coverage or industry award, was the measure of success that actually mattered.